Are we live? Hello. Welcome once again to more Libcon 2026. We have some great guests coming up for you today and some great guests here. We're going to be joined by Destiny in a few minutes. Also, Ryan Geddie's going to come on the show later. But right now, we have Andrew Lewis and Stephen Grand, and they will be telling us a little bit about the Georgia County issues, I believe. So why don't you introduce yourselves, tell people who you are, what you do, why we should listen to you, and we'll get into it. How's that?
I'm Steve Grand, and I'm one of the co-founders of First Five Freedoms, which originated in Atlanta, Georgia.
Beautiful.
Andrew Lewis, the other co-founder of First Five Freedoms in Atlanta, and trying to do our best to meet the moment that we're in.
And what moment is that? Did you guys see the Trump announcement speech yesterday where he went over the election fraud claims and things like that? What are your thoughts?
There's a lot to be concerned about. The way we structure our system of voting in the United States, it's left up to the locals. So at county level, at state level, and there is a deep concern in Georgia about what could transpire come October early voting, November 3rd, election day, of interference that would undermine the free, fair elections in the state of Georgia.
What kind of interference are people expecting, or are they expecting? Like, I think as someone who is not an expert in this field, but who does care a lot about our election integrity, I see statements from the president like this as kind of like a permission structure to put his thumb on the scale in various ways. But I just don't have the expertise to know how. If he was going to do that, what are some of the ways he would likely try to, put his thumb on the scale and rig the election, so to speak? What do you think?
I think thumb on the scale is absolutely right. And that's what he was signaling last night. And if you want to read the tea leaves, he has made a series of statements going all the way back to 2020, indicating that he's unhappy having lost as far as we can tell. But he continues to relitigate this thing.
He does.
And it's clear that he's not going to give up, and that there's real electoral advantage to him this time around in trying to interfere with the votes, our votes in Georgia.
What would that look like? Is he simply going to try to purge voter rolls? Is he going to try to federalize the system? What do you think he's going to do?
In my mind, there are two different things to take into consideration. There's the concern that Atlanta has, that many communities across the United States have, which would be the idea of federal agents at polling places.
Like ICE and things like that? Okay.
And preventing people from actually wanting to do their civic duty of voting. And I think that's something that's shared in many communities across the United States. The other one that I think is a little bit more concerning is in late January of this year, we had the 2020 votes of Fulton County, over 550,000 voters, and those votes were taken, and they were not taken simply to sit on. So what does that mean for this upcoming election? What does that potentially mean for the 2028 election, and how are those votes that were taken away from Fulton County, are they going to be utilized in some nefarious manner come October, November, that's going to undermine the over 500,000 voters of Fulton County?
There are some who would say this is sort of like doomsaying, that like, Trump talks a lot. He's very flamboyant, and he's very dramatic, and he's an entertainer, and all this is just him being blustery. What really can he do with the votes he has? What would you say to people who aren't taking it seriously yet? Like, how would you convince someone to be like, hey, this is an actual issue, and this is an actual threat to our way of life and our election system?
Yes. So imagine what happens if on election day, federal forces in one way or another, whether they intimidate voters or they take ballots, interfere with the lawful conduct of elections, which are supposed to, as Andrew was saying, are supposed to be run by local officials.
Yes.
They interfere with that in a way that skews the vote in Georgia, to the extent that you come out of it with the Democrats thinking they have won, because if you look at the polls,
Yeah.
Senator Ossoff is up at about 60% right now. And so say Democrats claim that Ossoff wins, and Republicans claim, based on the stealing of ballots and the interference with the election, they claim that the Republican candidate has won. It then goes to the outgoing Senate, the current Senate, as they leave office, and which has a Republican majority.
Okay.
And what will happen then is likely, the Republicans will vote the way their president wants them to vote, and will try to install a Republican Senate, a Republican-dominated Senate, even though the people have voted for something quite different. And that, if you think about sort of the threats to our society, that is like one of the most deadly threats, because you can't. This goes back to January 6th and the way that all played out. Imagine if he had been successful at preventing the electors from making Joe Biden president. Imagine if he had claimed that he was president, and that
if Mike Pence had actually gone along with the plan and said, "Okay, we're gonna hold it off a little bit, and toss it to the House, toss it to the Senate to kind of find out which slate of the electors is the correct slate of electors." Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Imagine the chaos that would cause. Yes. Imagine the lack of how much we would undermine the legitimacy of our institutions, and that sounds like a highfalutin word, but really the stability of our society. You start to, and the president himself said this last night, if you start to no longer have free and fair elections, you're no longer a democracy, you're no longer America, right?
Yes, exactly. We're also joined by Destiny, Stephen Bennell. Do you have questions for the gentleman?
What a disappointing scenario for everything involving all of the conspiracy mongering about the election in Georgia. I watched the night of a lot of these crazy conspiracies came out. Raffensperger dispelled a lot of them in hours. They were so ridiculous and so goofy. And Trump has just used this 2020 election as this fixation on somehow if he can right this horrible wrong that was done to him, with all of this evidence that you guys know better than anybody never materialized anywhere, or the evidence that did materialize was the exact opposite of what he claimed, whether it was the ballot boxes disappearing under the tables that was in the video the whole time, or whether it was a million other stupid conspiracies about voting and everything. One of my biggest frustrations when I talk to normal people, ordinary people, and I don't know if you guys share this or if this comes up, is, and it sounds embarrassing because I had the same issue a few years ago, is just the lack of basic civics. Like, people don't understand, how insane is it that everybody knows that Donald Trump and all of his little cronies, personal lawyers, called Raffensperger. Donald Trump made the phone call to the woman who was investigating the voting irregularities that he wanted to investigate. He made a direct call to her, even. And so there's two things. So one is the lack of basic civics, where a lot of citizens don't understand how insanely crazy this all is. And then two, another thing that has me very worried is there was a brief moment, it takes a lot to say this, I was proud of a lot of the conservatives in this country in 2017, when all the states rejected Trump's request for the voter rolls, and then in 2021, where it seemed like, even though they were conservatives, a lot of them stood up to kind of the bullying that Trump was doing. And I don't see that same fight this time around. I see a lot of states that have voluntarily given up voter rolls. I see a lot of states that seem to be on board with the Trump stuff. I said earlier to you how horrifying that picture was of Tulsi Gabbard standing outside Fulton County. What are your biggest issues that you think, when it comes to normal people communicating how crazy and terrible everything is right now with regards to their approach to trying to steal votes out of states or to try to redo this 2020 election? What are your biggest hurdles when communicating that?
I think you're absolutely right that it's really tough. We have gotten away from understanding what our country is all about. We've gotten away from talking about the importance of institutions, the importance of democracy to our way of life. I mean, this is our way of life that's a threat here. I forgot where I was going to go there, but
It's okay.
When you talk about importance of democracy, importance of way of life, and then my question has to do with like communicating this to ordinary people. I feel like sometimes when you talk to people, they have this view of like, well, both sides do it. It's always been this bad. It's always been, you know, goofy stuff with votes and everything. How do you communicate that we're in and we've been going through historic moments of challenging the validity, I guess, of our elections? We have multiple people have gone through these Senate confirmation hearings that won't acknowledge the results of the 2020 election. And then now you have, Trump with the Georgia stuff yesterday,
One of the things that concerns me is over the past decade how normalized we have allowed such actions to become that when talking about the deep concerns of what could transpire with the elections in Fulton County, in Atlanta, or in other communities across the nation, that people are not up in arms, where if we were to go back 10 years ago with the same scenario, 15 years ago, people would be in the streets, so deeply concerned about what was transpiring. People need to be awake to what is happening in this moment. People need to be participants. It can be small activities. Everyone is not going to be the person standing in front of the gates of the Bastille, but there is a role that everybody can play.
Well, can you give us some examples of something? Say someone's listening to this, right? They're not very physically fit. They don't go out much, right? But they do want to help. They do think that, hey, this is an actual problem. What can they do?
Many different things. In Fulton County and surrounding counties in Atlanta, those county elections offices need poll workers. These are individuals who give up their time during early voting and election day to simply allow for the free process of voting. It could be speaking with your neighbors and family of just saying, are you voting? Are you going to your polls and voting? And if you get the answer, well, you know what, it doesn't even matter. No, every voice doing their civic duty of voting, that matters.
I agree.
It does not matter. To me, while I have my strong opinions, I want to see people vote.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to influence them on how to vote, just to do their civic duty of voting.
So, worst case scenario, we do have ICE agents at polling places and things like that. What do we do then?
Well, for Steve and I, with our organization First Five Freedoms and an initiative that we've rolled out called My Georgia, My Vote, we're actually attempting to put together coalitions within the 4 major counties of Metro Atlanta that are able, if something is going awry at a voting location, if there are concerns because there are agitators at a voting location, that coalition made up of civic leaders and faith leaders and ordinary citizens can go to that location to address what's happening, to lower the temperature, to speak with the agitators, to simply be able to talk about we're all citizens. We all have our individual right to vote freely in an election. So trying to make sure that the process of voting is not undermined.
I think that's a great answer. Volunteering and also being ready with people who are leaders in the community to go into these places where there might be ICE agents or there might be some kind of agitators, as you put them, and to be able to calm the temperature. That's great. One of the things I worry about is too many people are on our side are trying to up the temperature, right? Like, oh, voting doesn't matter. They're just going to steal it anyway, right? And that's why I hear this refrain all the time. Like, none of this matters. Trump's just going to steal the election anyway. So we need to do something else. And what that something else means varies from person to person. What would you say to someone like that?
Well, one of the things, as we've talked to real election experts, which we're not, but real election experts, is They say vote early. Go and vote early, because most of the shenanigans, if they happen, will happen on election day. And so if you vote early, you're just ensuring you're putting it in the bank. You're putting that vote in the bank, and no one can take it away from you.
Also on that, I like to point out, like, what is the other side fighting against? Like, it doesn't make sense when I hear people say things like voting doesn't matter, it's not important, and then you look at all of the investment right now on the other side for trying to get the United States Post Office to not allow mail-in ballots unless the U.S. federal government gets some voter registration, or you see them seizing ballots from multiple places now in the United States to get a hold of voter rolls on the federal government. Like, you say that voting doesn't matter. Some people might say this, in different areas, but, like, very clearly the people in charge, they do feel like it matters. And you can see they change their mind on things depending on the outcome. Like, how long? I remember arguing with so many Republicans before the election that we don't live in a democracy, we live in a constitutional republic. And they would say this because they always lost the popular vote. But as soon as Trump wins the popular vote, well, now he has a popular mandate from the people. And it was the most important election of all time because he won the popular vote. So, yeah, I would say look at what the other side is fighting on. I mean, if they're trying so hard to make it difficult for you to vote, it doesn't make sense that voting wouldn't matter that much, because why would they pour so much investment in trying to prevent you from doing it,
Kind of on that topic, one of the concerns that I know Steve and I have shared is right now what we are seeing, many people moving to the extremes on both sides.
Yes.
And it's cratering that center that allows for, we may disagree, but we are working in unison for the betterment of our nation as a whole. That's important. Understanding that we can be at the same table and be passionately in disagreement of our own policy, but the desperate need to be at the table to together to understand those perspectives, to be able to move the ball forward without continuing this polarization that we're in.
From a policy perspective, from a lawmaker perspective, is there anything that the Democrat congressmen, senators, et cetera, should be doing either in the state or local or federal level in order to help ensure election integrity to a further degree, to ensure that Trump can't put his thumb on the scale, so to speak? Is there anything that we can put as like a strengthening a guardrail or anything like that that you can think of or advocate for?
One of the areas that I think really needs to be looked at long term, it certainly isn't going to be popping up in the near future, is we really as a nation need to be addressing political gerrymandering. It rewards the most extreme of political candidates, regardless of party, and that is only adding fuel to the fire of the polarization that we have in our nation.
Are you worried about the Texas gerrymandering and the other gerrymanderings across the country that might...
Whether it is Texas, California, Virginia, I applaud the folks in Indiana who were pushed to do the similar gerrymandering, and they said no.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're in a really dark spot right now. I think one of the challenges, I guess, when communicating, I don't have this challenge because I'm unashamedly, I don't know how to say partisan, but obviously I'm a supporter of the Democratic Party right now. One of the issues I have is on the right, there's a lot of what I would consider to be non-starters for conversations right now, to where we talk about sharing a table, but it's hard to share a table when you have, like, the President of the United States should never be tweeting out that members of Congress should be executed. That is beyond insane. That there's no room for that anywhere in our political system. The fact that we are... I hate, you read through history and it's like, well, how did these people allow, this crazy leader to come into power, and how did these people allow this to happen? And then I see we're at a stage right now in American politics where we have now had multiple political assassinations, which maybe I'm naive, but before or after the 60s, I haven't really heard of this big commonplace in U.S. politics. We don't even acknowledge some of these, right? Everybody says, well, who's being killed on the left or whatever? You had Minnesota lawmakers that were assassinated by a guy who was planning to drive to more places. You had the attacks of Paul Pelosi's husband. You've had the killing of Charlie Kirk. And every single time this stuff is happening, you see every Democratic leader, lawmaker, larger figures will usually come out in unison and say, this is unacceptable. We can't have this anymore. It's not okay. And then I remember Donald Trump going on to Fox and Friends after Charlie Kirk was killed, saying that When the people on the left engage in violence, it's just crazy and unjustified, but the people on the right do it in response to the people on the left, and I understand them. And it's just an insane, unacceptable statement from the president, who can never call on everybody to calm down, especially as somebody that goes out and gives these speeches. Yeah. Do you feel like there's a special challenge in trying to communicate to people when it feels like these issues are so partisanly driven? We talk about gerrymandering, for instance. There's one side that's holding up gerrymandering in the United States. We shouldn't be under any illusion to that. But then you don't want to come off as being like overly partisan, I guess. How do you approach any of these conversations? It's challenging, yeah.
Let me just give you some hopeful news.
Please.
We are a part of this First Five Freedoms effort. The two of us, Andrew in particular, have probably had conversations with 150 faith leaders and civic leaders in Georgia, mostly faith leaders, but also some civic leaders. He's probably had 150 conversations. I've tagged along for maybe 75 of those. And you have these conversations, and they're all one-on-one or two-on-one if I'm with them. And they all start out with, just some really dark conversations about what's happening now. But then, the second part of the conversation is always about the kind of America that people want. And again, these are in most cases clergy who are both on the left and on the right and in the middle, and they all, to a person, want to get beyond the culture wars. They want this polarization to stop. They want stability in the country. They want an end to all this partisan bickering. They want the parties to get serious. And on and on and on. And as you sort of put them all together, there's a clear program for where the next political leader, the next American president could go. There is, and we heard some of this at Libcon this morning, there is some clear things that everyone is hungering for. And I think we need to look there for the future.
One thing that comes to my mind, and I realize it is such a small little symbol, but every time I see former President Bush and Michelle Obama in the same room, the hug, the kiss on the cheek, does anybody think that they share a lot of policy together?
Probably not.
But the recognition of the humanity in each other, the friendship, that's something that is really elusive right now, and that we have to start trying to rebuild that humanity that has truly made our country great. And while we have been great, we have had our flaws, but we've always tried to remedy those flaws over time to become a more perfect union. Right now we're going through a very difficult time period, but like previous time periods, we have come out on the other side. So I do remain optimistic that good people doing good work, and we can together make our way through this very concerning days of ours.
One of the things that and maybe you can white pill me on this, but I hear you talking about going face to face, talking to faith leaders and other groups and people on the ground who all seem to want a shared American project, who want to come together and all these things. But we are fighting against a machine that monetizes division and hate, right? If I were to go on the show or to any of my channels and say, hey, we need to be friends with Republicans, reach out to your Republican neighbors, right? All these things, I get no traction. However, I say, those Republicans, they're all evil scum that need to be hunted down in the streets. Updudes, money, it pours in, you get attention, right? The people on the right will say, oh, look at that, but that's attention and it still makes you money. How can we beat that? How can we compete?
I think it begins with the humanity that Andrew talked about.
Sure.
And it begins having difficult conversations with your neighbors, not because, it's not because both sides are right. Okay. I would argue strongly against that, but because we all have a common humanity and we share that, and we need to build on that. We need to understand the people who are on the other side, and we need to the only way they're ever going to change their mind is through conversations, and the only way we're ever going to get political power is getting beyond sort of the small cuts of minor difference, the ideology of small differences, and come together as a force that wants to protect what's great in America, our democracy and our values and our rights.
Can you speak more specifically to the project that you guys are working on? You mentioned you're talking to a lot of faith leaders in Georgia. You mentioned putting together a coalition for stuff related to polling places and voting. Is that the primary focus of your project, is like voting day stuff, or what all are you guys working on?
Well, the initiative of My Georgia, My Vote has come out of the larger organization First Five Freedoms. First Five Freedoms, looking at the First Amendment and the five rights within the First Amendment. And the idea is it is the common table by which all Americans should be able to come together in support. So with First Five Freedoms, it is to celebrate and protect our First Amendment rights.
Based.
It is to condemn extremist political rhetoric and political violence. And it is to promote the idea of civility is the way that we are going to move forward in our nation that will better all of us. The continuous polarization is not an outcome that's going to be beneficial to any of us.
Sure. Do you have anything else for the gentleman?
No, I think we're almost at the end of our time. Are there any other thoughts or questions or ideas you guys want to bring up? Or
I think one thing I'm going to reiterate. One, everybody has a role. Everybody can pick their own lane. Find what is meaningful and find a way to engage in this moment. And two, I think it's important for citizens, if you are concerned about what it could mean to go to a polling place this year, vote early.
Vote early. If people want to help with your project or get involved, how can they do so?
And go to our website, first5freedoms.com.
First5freedoms.com.
.org.
Okay.
Or .com.
Misinformation. .org, gang. .org.
They both work.
Thank you both for being here. We really appreciate you, and I wish you well in your advocacy. And I think it is really important that we come
Thank you all
together.
for y'all's time.
No problem.
Thanks
Thank you
for
so
what
much.
you do. Thanks.
cool.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good with that. Yeah, just if you want to set your mics down on the chairs, we'll take care of it. I think we're still live. But yeah, just we're gonna get the next guest. Sorry to, I don't mean to shuffle you guys out, right? But no, thank you again. It was nice to meet you. Yes. Oh yeah, excellent. Yeah, I understand why. We gotcha. Okay. Okay, hopefully you guys are enjoying it so far. Okay.
Yeah, tell them, Whick.
Hell yeah.
Maybe I should be in front of the camera for my stream so that they know who I am.
Maybe. But yes, we are going to be doing these interviews as we go. We're going to have various guests on, and we're going to be talking about various things. Hopefully, if you guys have questions, we can get to those as well. But it should be good. We've got some great speakers at this conference so far. I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed yesterday's panels quite a bit. And I'm excited to hear from more people as we go, right? So here it is. Here it is, right? I'm just kind of killing time. Hopefully it's streaming to my channel now. We had some earlier issues. But you know what? We're going to get it done. We're going to get it done. Okay. Yeah, so who do we got coming up next? Not sure yet. Yeah, we're not sure yet. We're going to... Oh, Bill Kristol's coming on next. We got Bill Kristol, so stay tuned for that, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned for that. Yeah, I'm going to switch to here. Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Well, that's what I just put stop recording because she said don't fill up this guy's hard drive.
Why? Just in case it like the screen cuts off, you still have a video.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more.
Okay.
It's fine.
We're just giving you guys content as they work, okay?
If that was the guy's socks, can you ask him?
The guy's socks? I didn't see his socks. Are his socks pretty good?
This is
Okay. But yeah, Stardust. Why don't you? Oh, you're not. No one's ready right now. I guess it's just me. But yeah, we got some great conversations coming up. Okay.
Okay, so then we can just keep it.
Yes.
Let it do its thing.
What was it that Bill Kristol wanted to talk about again? Civil liberties and authoritarianism. So we're going to do some high-minded conversation. Is Ryan joining us for that one? And we will be joined by Ryan Geddie. So we will have Destiny, Ryan Geddie, Whick. We're going to have Bill Kristol. We're going to talk about authoritarianism, civil liberties, how it relates to liberalism. It's going to be great. And how we can maybe combat some of the growing illiberalism in the country. How you doing, Stardust?
I'm doing great. How are you
Yeah,
doing?
you enjoying Libcon?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
Yeah, say hi to the audience, I guess.
Yes, hello.
It's
Well, I'm
really
just
weird
here to
not being
help.
able to say. Can I just say, not being able to see chat is a different experience.
It's a very different experience.
I am usually able to see, people like this segment or people don't like this segment. People,
Then we could like
I don't know.
them like on a little teleprompter or something. We should think about getting.
I was just looking at that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. That would be
Yeah,
interesting.
just
Yeah,
looking at
yeah,
that.
yeah. But
You need anything? You need help with anything?
if they're out there, I don't know where they are.
Uh,
We need this.
I got it.
Off.
Okay.
I have securities. I know it's a
Okay, we are live tech gang. It's always an issue. It's always an issue.
I came here to help and talk
You did.
and talk to you. So
What's your favorite part of the conference so far?
seeing Ann Applebaum. I'm like
Yeah?
a huge Ann Applebaum fan.
Okay.
I even brought my book for her to sign, but I don't know if I'll run into her.
Hopefully you do.
I'm a huge Ann Applebaum fan.
Would you consider yourself a stan for
I'm a
Ann Applebaum? A
stan,
stan?
yeah.
Okay,
Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, like how K-pop fans are for
Beautiful.
K-pop. I'm like that for Ann Applebaum.
What are we doing? Oh, okay.
So basically, I do think I differ from quite a few people here
Mm-hmm.
because I'm very like pro foreign intervention. I'm very pro war.
Sure.
I'm not pro war,
Look,
but like I'm
we're
pro intervention.
We're
where
pro
it's
intervention
needed.
in things like Ukraine, right?
Yeah. But I do think, in an ideal world, if we are right now, we're not maybe not at the moral top, right? Because of our administration. But in an ideal world for like however many, decades, we were like the moral center
Yes.
of the world. We did morals better. We had better morals. We were more, future oriented. And I think
People derogatorily refer to that as like the world police, right? We're forcing
should-
our culture
if we
on other
were-
people, but
if
that's
we were truly
good.
the
That's a good
best,
thing.
If we were truly
That's
morally,
my opinion.
Are they gonna start rapping soon?
Yo. No, we're not doing
No,
a
but
rap
really-
battle, not
really
yet.
truly, if
Okay.
we are,
You got to
like-
pay more for that.
if
Okay,
we
yeah.
are like morally the center,
we are.
Yeah. If we're really the moral center of the world, we should be the world's police, right? But we are no longer. I feel. We see an administration that is rolling back things, that is actively sabotaging our institutions, that is actively sowing distrust in the public, and I think that unfortunately, with that being the case, we can't really say for sure as much that we are, at the top of that.
What
right
would
now.
you say to people that will point to things like the Iran war and say, this is what intervention looks like, and it's a terrible thing for America, right?
I'd
What
say
would you say
the
to people like
Iran
that?
war was done terribly, right? And I think you agree with me on that.
Of course.
We have one of the most effective, strongest military in the world.
Look, this is very informal. If you want to come on and just come on in.
by the way, on kick.com, by the way.
You are
Okay,
hijacking what I'm talking.
okay.
I'm trying to have a conversation here.
Yeah, just grab a mic if you like.
No, I just remembered where we were, and I was like, wait, hold on.
Okay. So as I was saying, I think we have the strongest, most lethal.
We're
hello,
live,
nice
yeah.
To meet you.
It's Ryan. Ryan, say hi. Say
We
hi
have
to
the
the
most
audience.
lethal-
Okay.
Let's let her finish her point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm used to it now.
No,
Wick.
it's okay. We wanted to-
I'm used to it, Wick.
I'm sorry, that was wrong of me.
No, it's not you. It's not you.
No, I'm blaming her. Okay.
All right.
The
Anyways.
blame's going to be on her.
you know, in the right world where we had an effective government that could wield those things properly, that could wield our effective, like our military force, our strongest military in the world, you know, our wonderful military-industrial complex. In the right world where we had a government that was capable of doing that, and more strategic with the Iran war, then maybe we would have succeeded there. But we didn't. He went in.
Oh.
After
Can you still see us, chat?
people-
Oh, we're getting the lighting done. Okay, sorry.
He
about
went
that.
in after telling people, he told people in Iran that, you know, keep fighting, I'm going to be there. Then they were slaughtered in the streets. They were slaughtered in their hospital beds. And then after that, he decided to go in. All the protesters are fucking murdered, dude. What was going to happen? There's nobody left to fight. Then you go in, you're doing like these half-assed, you know, making these shots, and then you know, the Strait of Hormuz is now closed. I had another point, but you guys are so distracting.
It's a lot. We're doing this live. If you guys don't know, behind us there is a whole thing going on.
Yeah.
So forgive us. Go, Ryan.
Anyway, sorry for
Am I in
taking
frame right here?
sorry for taking
You
up so
are
much space.
you are in frame.
Okay. Well,
Introduce
folks,
yourself to
I'm Ryan Geddie. I'm here to talk about liberalism, talk about democracy, talk about freedom, talk about equality, talk about building a liberal movement that can be more successful than what we have right now. So thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. What are some of the things that you think that liberals should be doing right now to build those things that you care about?
Well, I think one of the great things that we heard yesterday was the importance of an anti-corruption message to so many anti-authoritarian movements around the world. I mean, they gave plenty of examples, most notably in Hungary. We also just have to be ready to seize moments whenever they come. Another great thing that a Hong Kong activist was talking about yesterday at the convention was how you never know whenever a moment is going to come along that crystallizes so many of the problems that people have with the current regime, with the authoritarianism, with the corruption, with everything, and come to symbolize just things that are going wrong. I think sometimes it's things we don't expect. The reflecting pool.
Yeah, no one expected that.
The reflecting pool was weeks of jokes here in DC. You have no idea. It was so good. Everybody was joking
because
about
it came to symbolize just the incompetence of the Trump administration.
Yeah.
Right?
Indeed.
Yeah. So
it was something that people could easily see. They could wrap their minds about. You didn't need to know a lot of foreign policy, or you didn't need to get down in the weeds of it. It was just visible.
You could just see that the Trump administration is screwing up our national monuments.
And then lying about it and blaming it on others.
Yes.
Right?
the 200, 300-foot gash that never materialized when they drained the pool. And then, by the way, I filmed it the other day. They still had ducks swimming in the trash over there in this reflecting pool.
Yeah.
You know, initially, not a lot of people know this, but the first time the Trump administration came into office, they decided to cut costs on the reflecting pool. This is his first term. They decided to cut costs on the reflecting pool, not drain it in the winter like they do annually. And what happened is 30 ducks ended up dying within the span of a month because they didn't drain it. Yeah, and so it was like 30 ducklings died. It's actually insane. If you look into the reflecting pool, there's okay, let's not make jokes about that.
Okay.
But I don't want to.
It was quackers.
It was quackers, yeah. But you know, there's a lot to look into there. You know, I just think it's. It's a symbolism of everything. People don't even realize how long it's been going on.
I'm gonna grab something right before we get
Do you think? Yeah, we're about to go. I'm gonna get a drink too.
Can I
About 2
entertain?
minutes for like a minute, and
Okay.
then
All right. So what was really cool? Oh, am I still in frame? I don't know, people. Okay. What was really cool is yesterday after one of the talks, I went up to Ann Applebaum and I asked her, what does it look like when a illiberal democracy goes back to being liberal? And she said the best place to look at right now is Hungary because that's what they're doing. So I thought that was really interesting. I really like Ann Applebaum. I read Twilight of Democracy. I think if you guys haven't read it, you should read it. I haven't read Autocracy Inc. yet. I know that's her most famous book, but you know. So.
Okay.
Anyways,
Well,
sorry, I didn't mean to ramble,
we are
chat.
doing some last minute
Yeah.
stream setup. Thank you, Stardust, for coming on.
Yes, I'm just
I really
here to
appreciate
help
it.
assist and fill any
You
space.
were great. We appreciate her and her knowledge. Stardust is great. You should check her out on her channel. We're about to be joined by Destiny, Ryan Geddie, and the wonderful Bill Kristol to be talking about authoritarianism, illiberalism, its rise, and civil liberties and why they're important. So stay tuned. We're going to get to it. Excuse the mess. We're doing this live first time, right? So at least for me, Destiny's an old hat at this, but we're going to get it done. He's an old hat at this, yeah. We're going to get the spacing. There's going to be 4. There's going to be me, you, Ryan Geddie, and Bill Kristol. Where do you want us? I don't know if we're doing a fighting thing or. To my left? Okay. Yeah, I think I don't know if this is going to be a fight. So. Yeah.
I'll be here, and then you here, and then Geddie and Bill.
So, you, me, Geddie, Kristol. Okay. You guys ready? Let's do it.
Nope, don't even worry about it.
Let's have Bill be in the center there.
Okay, Bill's going to be in the center. Fair enough.
Yeah, he should be in the center.
Okay.
Ryan be in one of the outer chairs, whichever one you'd like.
Okay, I'll switch with Destiny. That's fine.
Are we live?
We are live. We are live. They can see us.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes. Yeah. Have a seat, sir. That one's for you. Destiny, sir. Okay. Well, welcome again to the next segment of Libcon 2026. We are joined by Ryan Geddie, Bill Kristol, and Destiny. Why don't you introduce yourself, Bill Kristol? Tell people, for anyone who doesn't know, who you are, what you do, why we should listen to you. Go ahead.
Oh, I don't know why. I'll let people make up their own mind if they want to listen
Fair.
to me, but I feel like I should have a one name, like Pele, Destiny, and stuff. It's much cooler than just the normal,
Sure.
first name, last
Yeah,
name
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
That was very clever of you to do that. Or you just have one name. Your parents said we're abandoning last names, we're just giving you a single name.
So my background is in professional video games. So in my professional video game day, I went by Destiny. I prefer the Steven name in the real world, but
Okay.
it's kind of confusing, but
Okay,
it
no.
works for branding online, I guess.
No,
yeah.
it's good. It's
Yeah.
excellent. Yeah. It's okay. I'll call you Steven. What did I do? I was a professor. I came to Washington 40 years ago, worked in the Reagan administration second term, and then was chief of staff of the vice president in the first Bush White House. Started the Weekly Standard, a conservative magazine, in 1995. That lasted till 2018 when it was closed down by our owner because we were anti-Trump, and was still more or less conservative.
Okay.
And then a few of us started the Bulwark, which with Sarah Longwell and Tim Miller and many other
I've heard of it, yeah.
famous people you've heard of, younger people, not as young as you guys, but on the young by my standards,
Yeah, yeah,
that's been great. Honestly, they've done the bulk of the work, so I give them a huge amount of credit for that. And I was never Trump from the beginning in 2015, and still am.
So what would you say is currently in America the state of our civil liberties?
I'd say not good. Well, under threat. I mean, this
Under
is
threat.
We have enough institutional weight here that it's not so and political balance still, and federalism. So there's states and traditions that are a little harder to just run roughshod over than maybe in Argentina or something 30, 40 years ago. So and Trump lost in 2020, so there was a 4-year interregnum. So all of that means, I think, that the progress of authoritarianism in some ways has been less bad, less dire than some of us thought it might be. On the other hand, it's pretty bad and pretty dire, and in a way, because it hasn't, in some ways, come through as much as it might have, I think people are now a little too complacent about it. And
Okay,
So,
so because
and
it-
some of the stuff that's happening is I mean, that sounds stupid every time one sounds stupid, one says, "Oh, this is shocking! I can't believe this is happening." And I, in fact, try not to say that because I think the formulation is actually very is misleading. We need not to be surprised it's happening. But having said that, what ICE is doing on the streets of America, it's really unbelievable. And should not be normalized, or we shouldn't just focus on, gee, there are a few abuses here, but most of them are, I mean, the whole thing is a disgrace.
Can I ask, as a never Trump Republican, you're in an awkward scenario to where I imagine you don't consider yourself Democrat aligned on a lot of...
No, I'm sort of an I am an ex-Republican. Pete Buttigieg said years ago, that he said he wanted the support of liberals and progressives. He had this whole shtick of vegetarians, and I want the support of future former Republicans. This was in 2019.
Gotcha.
I'm very much in the future former. So now the future's happened, and I'm a former Republican, and I've rethought some issues. So I am a little, and I think of myself as a kind of mainstream liberal these days. Honestly.
This is a question that all the Bulwark people get, and they all have the exact same answer.
Oh yeah. I guess.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us have had very similar.
Yeah.
We have different, variations. We try to think for ourselves, but look, you'd have to be an idiot not to see that if 80%, 90% of the conservative movement has signed on for Trump, more or less. I mean, some enthusiastically, some just acquiescing.
Yeah.
You'd have to be an idiot to say, well, gee, this movement that I was kind of part of, I had my issues with it, but still, that I was part of, didn't have more problems than I realized. I mean, you have to I think it's foolish to pretend everything I thought was correct, and I don't have to rethink anything, even though Trump has emerged from this movement and in this party that I was associated with.
My question, I guess, is... No, you're good, you're good. It's good to hear. Something I'm curious about is, how do you decide what values we should be fighting for versus things that should be off limits? Because I feel like something that's happened recently in our political conversation is, in my mind, there's a lot of stuff that we're fighting over now that I would have considered 15 years ago, and I imagine a lot of Republicans would have considered off-limit conversations. Like, we don't talk about trying to tell a state to change the outcome of their election, or we shouldn't talk about whether or not the feds can kill a U.S. citizen and then whisk them away with no investigation. But there are some things where there are very heated topics that I think are still worth debating. Things like abortion are very charged topics, but I can see there being two sides on these issues. Is there like an approach, or how do you figure out when you're looking at a topic where you're like, this is a thing where I want there to be rich debate between the left and the right, and this is a thing that I think we just shouldn't have to have this debate in a free liberal society? This should be something we all agree on.
Yeah, I mean, since we don't all agree on it, I think in a way it's easier to decide because it's not an abstract. I don't have to go look at a matrix of 10 things. You have to see what the authoritarians are doing, and then say, look, are they defensible? It's not every conceivable thing the Trump administration does. Some of them are just policy disputes, tariffs, let's say, or something, and so they can do damage to the country. Incidentally, even if they're sort of within the boundaries of acceptable and non-simply authoritarian policies, but it's not quite the same as you say, whisking people, citizens or non-citizens actually, off the streets of our cities and God knows killing them, and then covering it up, and then having a whole part of the federal government enthusiastic about the killing and the cover-up. I guess I have a pretty simple answer, which is, look, the founder, for 250 years, people thought a lot about what are the core issues core features of a liberal society. Democracy, respecting election returns, civil and political liberties, the rule of law, free press, freedom of association. I would say here maybe it's more of on the liberal side of things, old-fashioned liberal side of things, a pretty robust private sector and civil society that isn't simply at the mercy of government. So things that intrude on that are more important and more dangerous, I would say, than even foolish policies. Trump's foreign policy, I think, is very bad. And really, we could pay a huge price for it. But at the end of the day, a lot of that is still in the realm of policy. I mean, you don't have to be a strong member of NATO to be a good, to be a liberal Democrat and a strong defender of American principles. You can make a practical argument for how damaging it might be to get rid of it and all that. But I'd say the core liberal democracy issues.
Earlier, you sort of mentioned the civic Republican spirit of the American populace being one of the bulwarks that's holding the current administration back from pursuing some of their more authoritarian stuff. I wonder, we think about things like no kings here. Do you think that comes from just a long history of liberal democracy, or are there things that we do in this country that help people learn these principles, and how can we do more of them, if so?
No, it's a good question. I'm not I'm not sure I have a very good answer for it. I was struck when I was in Minneapolis right after the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy that they said there, the people who were so active, and it really was remarkable, the civic mobilization there, and 70-year-old people my age getting up at 6 in the morning to go to schools to help to meet the immigrant moms who were bringing their 6-year-old, to first grade or something, but to meet the family 5 blocks from the school, because if they went to the school, the mom could be or dad could be arrested, and so these people were walking strangers, obviously, little kids, to school, and then bringing them. Anyway, it was really impressive, and the people in Minneapolis were sort of, well, we're special. We have such a tradition, which they do, of liberal civic organization. Some of it church-related, a lot of it political, a lot of it going back to the original civil rights movement and Hubert Humphrey and people like that. A lot of it activated by the killing of George Floyd in 2020. So, I mean, I sort of resisted when they said they were special, because I wanted to believe that this could happen everywhere in the country. And I think it can to some degree, but it probably does help to have that tradition. It also helps to have, I found, just answering somewhat, going one thing to another, I found in working with my new liberal friends and friends on the left, that actually the groups that have the best sense of how to fight, of the need to fight, and in a sense, what to fight in the Trump administration, are often more progressive, more left-wing groups who have traditionally represented unpopular people, unpopular positions, civil liberties for people for causes that weren't popular, the ACLU, let's say, civil rights groups. Civil rights groups are not surprised that the government can be in alliance with thugs outside government, and that the government could lie, and the government could actually want to persecute people.
Yes.
I say my liberal friends who served in the Justice Department for 20 years and are wonderful people and really good, did a good job for this country when they were there under Obama or Biden or under Bush. Obviously, many of them were career people. They sort of still, some of them want to think, this can't be happening here, and the government can't really be doing this, and there must be something wrong, because how can they be bringing all these suits? It's like a couple of wackos Trump has put in there, and there must be rebellions underneath. There are some rebellions underneath, but not as much as, in a way, as I say, having the experience of a really lawless and authoritarian regime, maybe at the state level, in the case of obviously a lot of minorities and the blacks in the South, but honestly, with immigrants who've come from backgrounds where this was more, more the case, they're more attuned to how bad this threat is and how it can start off in a somewhat gradual way and get worse. I mean, but basically, just on the public, look, it's very important that Trump is at 40%. What would our situation be if Trump's popularity was 60%?
Much more dire. Much more dire.
He got elected with 49.8, 50, so 53%. Even if he were it would be much more dire. And that's not an incredible counterfactual, right? I mean, it could be. I mean, luckily he's screwed up in various ways, but luckily I think the economy isn't terrible, and the war in Iran is idiotic, but it's not like we're in Vietnam or something, right? Or even Iraq. So, I mean, in a way, it's striking to me. I give the public a fair amount of credit. If 10% of Trump voters have deserted Trump, which is basically 10 out of 50, so 20% of Trump voters have deserted Trump, more or less, that's not nothing. That's a lot of 1 out of 5, right? And,
how do we?
And again, if they hadn't deserted him, we would be in a lot of trouble.
How do we get more to desert him, frankly? You mentioned the liberal civil servants who've been in, serving in the various agencies for 20 years. They got their traditions. They have a pride in their service, and they are having trouble understanding the scope of what's happening. Yes, what is the best way to communicate to people who think, well, they can't have done that, right? It can't be that bad.
No, it's a good point. Well, I would be fair to the liberal civil service. A lot of them do now understand. I just think they kind of gets a little. Look, it's hard. It's hard to say that this place they worked at, a Justice Department, really a wonderful institute, very impressive accomplishment of the United States.
Yes.
Fixed after Watergate and pretty free of political meddling and pretty honest and forthright and law-abiding. Pretty hard to tell yourself this place you worked for 20 years and devoted an unbelievable amount of effort to is gone bad. Just like it would be for any of us, for any institution or group, civic association that we've been part of. So I understand that it takes people a little while to internalize that. I think seeing it, though, you need to really point out over and over, it's not just Pam Bondi and Blanche, and we should oppose them, and it's good to oppose it. But, other people are working for them. Other people are filing these lawsuits. ICE isn't just Mullen, right? ICE is the easiest example in a way for us, and it's getting bigger. And the Democrats were not attentive when Stephen Miller wanted to, get an extra $170 billion from him. I'm not sure they could have stopped it anyway. And then they did fight the $70 billion in the last several months, which was very important. Money matters, And I guess one thing I would say for my liberal friends is I do think, again, here the left in a weird way is a little better because they're sort of Marxist, the Marxist side of them sees this, and the right is better for historical reasons. Power matters. Levers of power matter. And we need to think a little more in a more hard-headed way. I think, well, what levers of power do we have? Now, the liberal America has a lot of levers of power. Obviously, the state and the local level, but obviously huge institutions out there that are mostly liberal or have been mostly liberal, universities, law firms, a lot of businesses, a lot of civic organizations. I mean, one political party, which has half the country basically. But the right's pretty good about sort of thinking, the Trumpist right. Authoritarians are pretty clever about this. Okay, what power do we have here? How do we use it? They're going to laugh at us. I'm going to give a speech with all this bullshit about, Chinese interference and all this stuff. But you know what? You've got to begin to get out the idea that it's out there. Even if 40% of the public believes it, it's going to make it easier when we say that's why we have to take over the, election management in certain states or localities and all that. I think my liberal friends are a little, and I don't mean to criticize, believe me, I'm with them and they're my friends, but they're a little too quick to say, well, that was ridiculous. That was silly.
I feel like Gavin Newsom's...
It can be ridiculous, but, a lot of authoritarians through history have been thought at the time, correctly, to be kind of ridiculous people, performative. A lot of their stuff was idiotic. But just the body weight of the Trumpist authoritarianism worries me a lot.
I feel like Gavin Newsom's actions on Prop 50 in California were an interesting turning point for this, for a lot of Democrats. I know I saw tons of criticism for that move. I was for it, but I know I saw tons of criticism for that move from some Democrats. And I think that was a big turning point. And I think it's why for a long time, and even still now, he's one of the top people in polling for 2028. I assume he's going to try and run. I think, Abigail Spanberger tried to do a similar thing in Virginia, even though it was overturned by the courts. And I supported that too. I mean, is that an example of what liberals sort of using their power looks like to you?
Yeah, I voted for the
Spanberger
for the thing. No, it's important, and we should be for, I think, maybe a better House of Representatives if there were nonpartisan redistricting. It's not the solution to everything, obviously, because the Senate doesn't have gerrymandering, and the Senate is bad too, and the polarization goes so deep now, and so has such socioeconomic roots and cultural roots as well as just the gerrymandering. Having said that, be a better House, a better political system if we had less gerrymandering. But you know what? If they're going to do it, you can't be helpless.
Exactly.
And I do think that's an important lesson. Now, look, having said all this, I think compared to a lot of other places, liberals in America we're pretty quick to wake up to. We're quick to wake up to Trump. I think the thing that shocked them, and it unfortunately surprised me, though I came to realize it was happening pretty fast. I think fairly fast, was that the conservatives were not going to be there with them. I think, liberals were. It's nice in a way that they had enough regard for, those of us who liked John McCain and had worked in the George H.W. Bush administration, but even people whom they didn't like as much who worked in the George W. Bush administration, and some of us who were warmongers and all. It's nice that they had enough respect for us that they kind of assumed, well, at least these people are for the rule of law and constitutional government and decency and they're not, and rationality and honesty, and they're not going to go down this path. And in a way, you can't blame the liberals for the conservative. Look, why is Trump so powerful?
Why?
If the Republican Party hadn't gone with Trump, he would have been a one-term president, would have done some damage, would have been a demagogue. It would be like a parenthesis in American history, though, kind of an unfortunate parenthesis. Yeah. It was the party going with him that gave him all, and his ability to then intimidate, and then his ability to keep control after January 6th, that has made him the incredibly powerful.
It does strike me that
that's not liberals' problem, that's conservatives' problem. The only problem liberals had was they slightly overestimated the decency and the integrity and the courage of a lot of conservatives.
Yeah. What caused that? What caused the kind of like the capitulation?
Well, surely control of the base, right? I mean, I feel like for the longest time, maybe that's
it's just primary threats.
I think that's part of it. I think after January 6th, I think a lot of them just thought he was finished, and I think they thought that there was no need to kind of
you could get away with not having to confront
because you'd irritate people, and then for what if he's done anyway?
It's hard to know how much of this was what they really thought, how much of it was rationalizations, how much of it was wishful thinking, obviously, which is what they thought. I guess it's just wishful. No, it's a good question. I mean, there were elements of the conservative movement. I think one of the most dispiriting things for me is that it turned out that certain aspects of normie Republicans and previously decent conservatives, they kind of liked aspects of Trumpism, if we can be honest, right? It wasn't just that they had to go along grudgingly, I don't approve of this, but at the end of the day, the left is more dangerous. That's what they would say. But there was a little bit of also, God, finally they're getting, someone is fighting hard and giving it to those people we've resented for decades. I don't quite sure why there was so much resentment, honestly. It's not like conservative business people or other people in America. A couple of places it was a little they were discriminated against a little in the academy, I suppose, and all this. But it's not like they've been miserable for the last 50 years, right? We're not talking about. It's not like it's one thing if you have an authoritarian movement that comes to power and is representing an ethnic group, let's say in a country. This happens in Europe sometimes, right? That has been put down and really treated horribly, and then they get power, and their instinct is, okay, we're going to pay back. But who's paying back here? Did Donald Trump have a miserable life in America? Until he was president of the United States? Did all these creeps working for him? I mean, Mark Wade Mullen, I don't know.
J.D. Vance.
This is the populism.
Yeah, you hear Vance and the National Conservatives talk about.
Vance rose in the old America,
right,
which was open to people like who came from from families that didn't have college backgrounds.
And they want to pull up the ladder behind them.
You get a scholarship at Ohio State. You go to Yale Law School, and there's no recognition that maybe the society,
liberal democracy's been very good for them by and large.
The society that allowed you to do this is not so terrible. Now he knows that at some level. Surely he's not an idiot,
right?
But he's willing to just risk it all and throw it all away for this. For what? I'm not sure.
I was going to ask, I guess, on this vein, it seems like there's some mechanism in the liberal side of politics that's somewhat self-correcting for all the faults that people might say for running Biden again. Like, he was ultimately pushed out of that election because the entire party saw that this probably wasn't going to be the way to go. And then Harris came in, and obviously there was that whole fiasco. It feels like on the Republican side, there was this brief window of time after January 6th. I'm thinking of heroic figures, Cheney, Kinzinger, that stepped up, were on that J6 Select Committee. And that after Trump was gone, there was a little bit of like an awakening, and there was like a moment there where the Republican Party could have kind of, I don't want to say returned to normalcy or something, but could have at least taken a step aside from the crazy Trump stuff. And you see after the 2024 election that we just had, all these Democrats are like revisiting everything. They're like, we need to change. We can't. Whatever we were doing before, it's not working, right? Trump left. Trump left. He left, and then we got a Democrat in, and the Republican strategy after a year was basically just like, okay, we're going to do the exact same thing we did, but we're going to do it 10 times harder than we just did it. Why do you think there was that missed opportunity, or what is lacking in the Republican Party, that self-corrective mechanism that it seems like the Democrats listen to a little bit more?
No, I very much agree with that, and I mean, not just Biden, and I was one of those who wanted him not to run again and got grief from the White House and all, but it was obviously shouldn't run. But I mean, look at recently with Plattner or Cuomo in New York, let's say, there's been a certain willingness to say people whom they, in the case of Plattner, a lot of them really kind of were enthusiastic about. In the case of Cuomo, a guy who'd been around forever, had a lot of allies and, relationships, as they say, and all. No, I very much agree that liberalism, the flip side of occasional liberal, not being tough enough, is that there's a kind of decency and a sense that we should try to be the party, the movement that's more humanly decent, I would say. I don't know, the conservative side, I mean, that's a real story. I mean, both the accommodation in the first term, I would go back to that. Well, first of all, not 2016, you get the tape goes out there, and there's a day or two of, oh my God, and then, okay, you know what, he's our nominee. Then 2018, I think it's 2017, there was a sense of, we can constrain him, and they did somewhat. But it was pretty clear by about 2019 that he was going to be not constrained much anymore, and things got more radicalized at the end of the first term. But then he lost. He did ultimately leave office, and people were willing to tell themselves a fairy tale about how he was finished. And I'm for Nikki Haley. I'm for Ron DeSantis. I'm for maybe Jeff Kemp can be reelected in Georgia, and he was really not even Trumpy, and he could possibly win. But the thought when they went after Liz Cheney in 2022 and crushed her, and then Kinzinger leaves. And then by 23, I don't know, it's an interesting thing. I haven't really gone through it as carefully as I should in retrospect. It's too unpleasant. 23, 24, the accommodation to Trump. I mean, think of it. There was, Trump wins the primaries, and everyone supports him. And people who've said, publicly he can't be president again are like, well, I guess.
Like his vice president.
I mean, can Nikki Haley, I guess she did she believe in her heart that it was better for the country to have Donald Trump than Kamala Harris? Or, well, she probably did. I guess she did believe it. And then why they've therefore bought into a certain picture of the Democratic Party that's a little bit insane after 4 years of Biden. I don't think it's a party that you have to fear. It may not be a party that's that good at doing things. It's not a party you have to fear very much. Did Merrick Garland go around persecuting people very much? I mean, he went after Trump, but that was late and actually well-deserved, in my opinion. Anyway, a long way of saying, and there was, but I come back also to the fact that the standard explanation is they bought a story about the Democrats and all this, but I think a lot of it is also there's this elements of conservatism that ended up relishing some of what Trump did.
In this vein, does this explain the trajectory of someone like Marco Rubio, who's a real political survivor in this era?
I mean, and look, a lot of it is, you guys sort of alluded to this earlier, a lot of this is pure ambition and pure opportunism.
Right.
And I wouldn't understate that. I mean, I came to Washington when I was pretty young. What was I? Early 30s. And, Reagan was kind of on the upswing. Reagan had won a huge re-election victory. And I had been a Reaganite after being a kind of Hubert Humphrey, Scoop Jackson, Pat Moynihan Democrat. But anyway, I was a Reaganite. But there were a ton of people in the Reagan second term who had been Rockefeller Republicans and moderate Republicans and this kind of Republican and that kind of Republican, certainly Bush Republicans. This was kind of the winning movement. And the party, they were more Republican than Democrat, and they were on board. And, they had sort of been pro-choice. They weren't really pro-life. But, that's kind of what the orthodoxy was. So they kind of became that. And there were a lot of people did that. And it wasn't really going to matter. It's not going to happen, But it's sort of part of what this. And then we have these allies. Some of them are a little wacky, honestly. But again, they're not really going to be powerful. And the truth is, conservatives were able to keep then Republicans that thought for a long time. At the end of the day, the party nominated, Dole and Bush and Romney and McCain. The leaders of the party in Congress were Boehner and Paul Ryan and Bill Frist and all these people, and the early Mitch McConnell, and whatever you think about them, they sort of believed in basics of the American political system, So it's pretty easy to say those people will be fringy. And I would even say, to their credit and our credit, we fought Pat Buchanan, we defeated him.
Mm-hmm.
He left the Republican Party. The nativism seemed to be receding. But we underestimated how much of it was there beneath the surface. I'm not sure there was much we could have done about it. I mean, we fought it, but people have their views, and you can't censor, talk radio people you don't like, and just as you shouldn't censor streamers you don't like, So the
new
the
talk
stuff,
radio.
the stuff, the stuff festered beneath. Yeah, you guys are better than that, but
I don't know. Sometimes.
sometimes the stuff festered beneath the surface and really exploded, and a lot of it was bad luck. I mean, this is a question like, what if Trump doesn't win it? What if he doesn't run? And what if the Republicans nominate a semi-normie Republican in 2015? They'd be more anti-immigration, I guess, than they would have been. But they wouldn't have, I don't know. A lot of this could have stayed at 20 or 30% of the party. It became 50, 60, 70%.
Yeah.
So Charlie Sykes used to like to say that the nativism, the racism, a lot of this stuff was a recessive gene in the Republican Party of the 80s and 90s and 2000s, which meant it was real. And recessive genes are genes. I mean, they're there.
Yes.
And they sometimes become non-recessive, whatever the term is in biology, right? And that's sort of what happened.
One last question for you, because we are running out of time. We'll respect your time. Speaking of using levers of power, Josiah from Pondering Politics wants me to ask you, court packing, are you for it, against it? What are your thoughts? There's been some talk from presidential hopefuls.
I'm open to it. I'm certainly for various forms of court reform. You could maybe do term limits, might be better than, quote, literal court packing, which just has a bad history because of the failure of Roosevelt's attempt to do it. And I'm also, let's just see what happens over the next 3 years. The courts have been bad, but not as bad as they could have been. The lower courts have been pretty good. No, but I think everything's
That's the old Republican coming out, and you're right there. I'm just kidding.
No, it is. You're right, it is. And I was going to say, but I'm now going to go to the new non-Republican, ex-Republican. Everything should be on the table. You can't go through. It would be idiotic to go through a crisis.
That's right. That's
everything
right.
in terms of institutional reform and so forth, in the sense that not everything things that violate civil liberties.
Fair enough.
Right. But every institutional mechanism, they were mechanisms. They're not 9 justices. It's not even in the Constitution. It's certainly not in the laws of nature and nature's God. It's just and if maybe 13 justices would be better. And I do think we need to be bold and open to debate on all of that. It's not going to all happen at once in January of 2029 either. But because you can't go through a crisis like this and just think, if only we could go back to, some sort of, nice version of what things were like in 2014. It's not going to happen anyway. You need to be forward-looking, and that means being open to pretty radical reforms.
On ICE too?
On the reform, I'm a total abolish ICE person.
That's right.
I mean,
That's right.
Look, I say this as someone who was in government and who studied a little bit of this stuff when I was back in my political science days. When institutions get corrupted to the degree they do,
You got to
just
rebuild
need
it.
to
You gotta
restart, start over.
eliminate
I mean,
them,
that's
yes.
just practical. I'm very unhappy about them, and I think it's a symbolic matter. It'd be good to get rid of them. But I just think it's an actual practical matter. If someone may be president in January 29 and said, you know, you got to run an immigration system here. What do you want? I wouldn't say, well, let's look at the current ice and see how we can tweak it. You know, I would say, fine, okay, we'll figure out how to do a better job, and we'll figure out to build a new immigration authority.
Sounds
That's
good.
right.
Anything else from anyone else before he has to head out? No.
Maybe
any-
just a brief, I guess, a quick question. How do you decide as somebody starting a new media thing, somebody who used to be Republican, how do you decide when it's time to leave versus when you want to stay and reform? Like, at what point are you like, I don't want to be a part of this movement anymore. I'm going to do my own thing on the outside versus I'm going to remain here because I want to be like a guiding light in this movement?
I mean, I just thought Trump was intolerable and unacceptable and unsupportable by me. I didn't think when I was never Trump in late 2015 and 16 that meant necessarily that I wouldn't be voting for Republicans, you know, 2 years later. But then he took over the party, and the party accommodated to him. And in 2018, I was in my congressional district. I think this will answer your question. In Northern Virginia, we had a good Republican member of Congress, Barbara Comstock, who was never anti-Trump and voted against some of the Trump stuff on the Hill. But still, she was a Republican. She was going to vote for Kevin McCarthy for Speaker. I guess it would have been McCarthy at that point, right? Paul Ryan was stepping aside, or both the Republican for Speaker. And I just thought Democrats need to win the House to limit the damage Trump could do in his last 2 years. And I had a difficult conversation with her where I said, she asked me for contribution, and I said, no, I'm going to vote for your opponent, who was a nice person, kind of ordinary Democrat, you might say, because it's just important that Democrats win the House. And I think that was kind of, for me, not that one thing mattered, but that year of like 2018-ish was the moment where you start to realize this is not just I'm against this one individual or against MAGA. You're against the party. Once it takes over the party, then you have to be against the party.
Well, thank you for spending time with us today. Bill Kristol,
pleasure.
everyone.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
Thank
you.
you so much.
Overwhelming applause. Nice to see you guys.
Oh, of course.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for doing
Nice to meet
thing with Tim and all that. That was great.
One thing,
I missed Sarah now, but she was good. She was nice to you.
All right, guys, we've given you so much content. Okay, we're going to be back in like 10 minutes. Stick around. Make sure you super chat Whick for putting this all
True.
together. Okay, he's being
Money.
a trooper. And, you know, there'll be some more content coming out soon after this.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm going to, if anyone wants to come up and entertain the stream for a minute, I got to do a couple things. Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Excellent. This is what we like to see. We love that support. Give me money. Give me money, okay? Hit that like button, too. I got to pass the hat around. I'm a busker, okay? I put on a show for you. I organize these things for you. The lovely Erudite and others have helped to organize these things for you, right? Support us. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Look, you bring someone on, we'll make content. Okay. Great. Excellent.
We're going to try to get over 3:30. I'll text Alan when we have it.
Okay.
So you have like 30 minutes to chill on Kraut or something like that.
Okay. We can do something, right? We can do something. But give me a second. I gotta get a drink and do a couple things. Alice, why don't you come up and say hi to my audience? Tell them all about the things that you got going on, some of the things that we can do as liberals to kind of connect and organize better. Go ahead.
2 panels I've been on, 2 conversations, last night and today. I brought the gear, that's my camera. No one asked me why I'm a liberal. So I have some draft tweets, but I'm just going to ramble about it live here instead. It's my stream now. I've taken over. And I have a way different, more cynical answer than everyone else who's been asked, and no faction is going to like it. I am a liberal, and this is the truth of all of you too, because of information exposure. I have a background in media design. We are not as ideological as we would like to think. You can ask anyone with a background deep into like political science or philosophy, and if they're honest with themselves, they'll come to the realization, which is psychologically, developmentally true, that we tend to look for after the fact rationalizations for things we tend to already believe, things we pick up developmentally early on through our experiences firsthand. And then formal ideologies and philosophies give us a lot of language and structure to put words to those kinds of things we already happen to believe. This is why like a lot of debates about philosophy or whatever don't really seem to work. And a lot of us are really just ideology shopping. Why I'm a liberal is because I paid attention, and it's probably why you are too. Liberalism is responsible for most good existent things in our society, no matter what your society is, because liberalism is inherently pro-social and sustainable in a way other ideologies are not. Liberalism really comes down to, if you read theory, sort of one just core premise, and then the base structure of rules around that you need, that extrapolates out into a whole system of law and society. Egalitarianism. What people seem to forget, especially leftists these days, is they take credit for all of the accomplishments of liberalism. The Enlightenment really did change the world. And it started with that idea of rejecting monarchy. Like, what if we were actually equal? What if people are not born more special than others, or more divine than others, or more important than others? What if people are just people? Therefore, you can start to draw some conclusions. Any rules we have, any structure we have, is just a matter of consent and like contracts drawn out from that. Like we all lend our power to that. We make some deal that benefits us. And then, because we're all just people, and we could really just be anyone else, we are interchangeable, we're not fundamentally different, we should probably then, at a systematic level, draw some Kantian categorical imperative philosophy ideas. The golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. And really, we're just using laws where they make sense to optimize for our individual opportunity. Freedom is a bit of a misnomer because the right says freedom a lot, but they mean hegemony by it, which is fundamentally illiberal. So if we're just assuming all people are kind of equal and you're maximizing for the opportunity of any individual person, you're going to have better odds on average. You're going to have more stuff on average, more pro-social stuff on average. Sorry, I have a chronic lung disease. It's genetic. I'm not sick. But yeah. So liberalism just tends to work. It's like acting in the interest of everyone and not just yourself, which tends to just be more sustainable and create more proof that liberalism works. I don't have chat up. I don't have any way to interact with chat. I hope I'm making sense. And so like, if you paid attention in school in history class and you passed, if you went to college, you understand like how and why liberalism is responsible for a lot of these things. But yeah, go back to Mills. People always talk about like Mills is on liberty. A lot of the people here today you've seen, this is why you can't take this event seriously as representative of the left as a whole. This is just a left group. Disproportionately educated, disproportionately probably high earning, disproportionately white, and a lot of people disproportionately male. And a lot of men like to take credit for like these ideologies as like, oh, I made this big important decision, it was me. When that's really just not the case. Mill specifically wrote another piece with his partner at the time. Sort of a mistress, like they were kind of best friends, they had a complicated thing going on. I believe it's called On the Liberation of Women, which is brilliant. It's a sequel to something she herself wrote alone, and this is what they wrote together. And you can see in liberalism's cradle, as it's sort of formalizing itself and developing, it was this excitement, which would seem very left-wing, very progressive now, and we need to reconnect those roots. The excitement that people are just people, and there are no meaningful differences until proven otherwise. Like, women are people who have equal capabilities. That was a new revolutionary idea at the time. It was unpopular at the time, but it was right. It was true. I'm sorry, I forget the name of Mary Wollstonecraft's book. She's considered the first feminist. Her first feminist work was not popular at the time. It was not well received at all. And you might not have even heard of it. However, you have heard of the real big win, which was by her daughter, Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, one of the first horror novels, which is all about acceptance of people different than you. We're doing something else?
Gang. Well, no, you're going to stay here if you like. You don't have to.
woke with
Well, cool. We can do that.
How's it going? I'm gonna sit down.
Yeah, come sit.
This works.
If you'd like.
I think it's
working.
it's attached to the
yeah,
digital thing.
it's live.
For a second, just get my phone so I can look at chat.
Oh, take your time. Take your time. This is Hunter Kozak.
Hey. I make TikToks. I make YouTube videos. I'm probably more famous for other reasons.
A few other reasons. Counting or not counting incidences in Utah. I don't know. But regardless, he's with us today to talk to us, and we are excited to have him.
What's up, Kyla?
5 minutes? Got you. Okay, is
have the
Destiny
who?
joining us for Colonel? Okay. Okay, great. Go do that. Okay. Okay, so we might be...
No.
Yeah, take it. Okay, well, I guess in about 5 minutes we're going to have Colonel. But in the meantime...
Who's
do you guys,
Colonel?
Well...
I don't know who that is.
Are you guys interested in NATO and foreign policy, things like that?
Absolutely.
Do you want to back me up?
I'm a big NATO fan.
Assuming we can, right? Yes, and
Sure.
Ukraine and foreign intervention when it's acceptable, when it's not acceptable, when we should do it, when we can't do it, all these things. We have a NATO colonel coming in. We're going to talk to him and the importance of NATO and staying in NATO and these things. I'm hoping that that's the case, right? This is a thing. They tell me we might have this person, and yeah.
Just so that it doesn't sound like you're talking to nobody.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's just so freaking crazy that you
Hopefully it hasn't been...
It's so freaking crazy that they just put you like, oh, let's just have Whick just like run all of this. Like, that's amazing. This is a huge opportunity for you, right? How does that
hopefully
feel?
it's going well. It's
Do you think?
nerve-wracking, and we there was some miscommunications
Is it
at the
weird if
beginning.
I
so
like
we
go
got it.
over here?
You know,
and I'm like,
if you want to
hi,
be in the
but I
shot,
have
be
my
in the
little
shot.
like,
Come. You can have
I
the
feel
shot.
like an
Okay.
asshole
You can-
that I have my little IRL. Like,
Why? You're
you
making
know,
money. We're all
like,
making
it's like
money.
dual,
Okay,
like,
we're all making money
you know,
today.
I feel like a fucking.
But yeah, if you wanted to talk about any of these things too, but
yeah,
what were you saying?
I'm gonna
I
put
have
this
not
back.
made any money.
Not made any money. We got to change it. Well, you got
What?
to stream this too. Okay.
Yeah, you gotta
do
go
these
live.
things.
Yeah. Just do like hello.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go freaking.
So,
When in doubt, go live.
favorite parts
Okay,
of
anyway.
the show today. Favorite parts of Libcon so far.
Fukuyama. for sure.
Fukuyama. What about
Yeah.
him? What about him got you
Well,
going?
I don't know. He had a really good he had a really good talk on Humphreys, the Supreme Court.
Yeah, Humphrey's executor.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That like essentially there's a harder conversation to be had
Yeah.
about Humphreys, which is that in some ways the having all of these executive functions and having all of these different organizations is sometimes stifling, and not having the president essentially be able to be over them can sometimes, like, they are sometimes pushed away from democracy. Now, obviously, maybe, having Trump in charge of these is probably
Probably not wise.
yeah, but there's a harder conversation to be had, right? Like that, like it's
Sure.
not necessarily just like a simple yes or no about whether or not that should have happened. And there's a more balance about like how much red tape should exist within these districts.
I understand. No, that's though. I saw that panel. I thought it was very interesting. I liked the one of the other gentlemen whose name escapes me. He wrote some works on populism and the dangers of populism abroad, and he mentioned the kind of like dichotomy that we're living through, right? Where in order to secure power, Trump's admin has had to make the choice between loyalty and competence. And in some ways, their choices of loyalty, which has destroyed their competence, is helping them lose power. But the problem is they're acting as if they don't care about the next elections. They are looting the country. They are just taking everything for all they're worth. Look at the corruption scandals from Trump's families and insider trading and how it's ballooned out to massive proportions, right? In 1 year on Bitcoin, using Bitcoin, Trump has made more than Nancy Pelosi has in stock trades in 25 years. Okay, so keep that in mind if you want perspective here. Yeah, and unfortunately, that's going to cause lasting damage, even when they are likely to be moved out of power soon. So, yeah. Alice, what's been your favorite part of Libcon?
I saw the panel on Gen Z and the youth.
I didn't see that. Okay, tell us for those of us who didn't see that.
Sarah
Okay.
Longwell is spectacular.
Beautiful.
As a user researcher myself, I greatly respect her perspective. And I saw her be right about something after Stephen Bennell was wrong about something.
Oh, what was he wrong about? What did she get right?
So he proposed this idea that like right-wing media is this top-down thing where you have your big news networks spreading talking points, and then all of their spreading down through new media just recycles those clips and echoes those kinds of sentiments, when it's not actually true. What Sarah Longwell pointed out is a lot of it starts at that lower level, which is true. On streams and stuff, we'll say a bunch of stuff, and this is how the alt-right rose, using that as like an experimentation lab of random talking points, random memes. Occasionally, some of those get high engagement. And those are what get funneled up through bigger streamers, then to like the news sources, then to the politicians. And then their bigger figures can just say those things that are big hits and working, and then that is what gets echoed down. So it's not just starting with like the big news networks, the big right-wing politicians coming up with their own talking points. They're using social media as this like enshittified trash lab for everything they can throw out there, and only taking what works. So it's bottom up, and then it broadcasted back from the top down.
Sure. Well, you know, we got our guest here today. How long do we have him for? Do you know? We're talking 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Okay. Entertain the audience. I'm gonna ask.
Cool.
$30 Okay.
Great.
Oh, I think that's the Colonel over there. Yeah, but we're going to be talking about NATO. Do you have, I don't know. I mean, I have very strong feelings about NATO. I've got my little NATO pin here. Yeah, I think that it's kind of hard sometimes to have a nuanced conversations about the military. Obviously, just because sometimes there's so much damage that's being done. Obviously, the current war in Iran is not something that, like, you know, we have to support in order to support NATO, but it's obviously a harder conversation about the fact that, like, sometimes the leaders of NATO do these horrific military attacks that it's a harder conversation. But, like, obviously I could also point to the support in Ukraine, the support in the Balkans, the support against Russia, against Eastern expansion, that I think are very, very critical and very, very important. And I think it's easier to just go, well, we just shouldn't have a military. We should just get out of all of these. We should be an isolationist little country and just shift away from all of those, from all these conflicts. When you see bad conflicts happen, you're just like, we should just stay out. But there's a harder conversation about being more nuanced about it all. I don't know.
Geopolitics and war is hard. It often gets messy. And there are some like bad and evil things that happen sometimes. But we have to play that at a big scale and actually try to maximize the good and minimize the bad. And sometimes it means we need to go to war against someone who's worse. And it's hard to do. And it's, frankly, for the better, typically, if we do that in a cooperative manner, where we work together to win when we need to win, and also to hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
So orgs like NATO are always going to be perfect, but worth it.
No, yeah, exactly. And I think that's what like NATO really is about, is holding each other's countries accountable. But yeah, obviously it's going to be done imperfectly, and obviously you could point to a lot of different situations in which it wasn't great in which happened. But that's
okay. Little bit of a change of plans, gang.
Okay.
We're going to be joined by the Colonel and Destiny in about 30 minutes here, around about. But until that time, we have the lovely. Come on. It's okay. It's
Kraut,
okay.
we're talking about
we
NATO.
Have Kraut. We have Kraut with us from Kraut and Tea. Tell my audience, right, who you are, what you do, why we should listen to you. Go ahead.
Okay, I've streamed with you before.
You have.
I'm a YouTuber from Europe. I'm based in Austria, in Vienna. I make political science content. I try to raise money for Ukraine. And I've come here to talk to more American liberals to be able to connect them better with Europeans.
Is this your first time in America?
My first time, yes.
How's it treating you?
I love it here.
It's
a great place.
I agree.
You may have some political difficulties, but I do enjoy my time here.
Well, good. I guess when we talk about liberalism, a lot of us in America tend to think locally, right? Like, with our domestic issues, domestic policies, all these things, why should we broaden our horizons to what's happening in Europe and across the globe? Why should that matter to the average American? What happens in, say, Hungary or
if
things?
you abandon one liberal democracy,
Yeah?
you never just abandon one. It always comes back to another. We can go to 1938 when Western Europe decided to abandon the only Central European liberal democratic state, which was Czechoslovakia, to the Nazis. And did that help? Did that appease Hitler? Did that appease
Of
the
course
Nazis?
not.
No, it didn't. It led to even more war. And there is never just an enemy of one liberal democracy. There are always enemies of all liberal democracies.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed recently, I say recently, I mean in the last 10, 15 years, Xi Jinping, Putin, and other authoritarian leaders, they will often not just attack democratic movements in their country. They will often attack America specifically and try to paint us as far worse than we are, and try to destabilize us and use that instability in order to say, well, look, we have our problems, but look what's going on in America. They can't even get their act together. Look, they can't even do
Especially
voting
the
right.
Russians.
Yes.
Especially the Russians.
Oh, yes.
January 6th was the biggest gift that the Trump administration has ever given to the Russian regime of Vladimir Putin, because a core foundation of Vladimir Putin's grip to power in Russia is he continuously argues, like if you watch Russian propaganda videos, it's non-stop of a sort of everyone is corrupt, everyone is bad, everyone can't be trusted. We are just the least corrupt among the corrupt, basically. It's a sort of continuous cynicism. And that is something that you will find in many authoritarian regimes. It's just cynicism after cynicism after cynicism after cynicism to justify why the regime exists. And this, what happened here on January 6th, and generally the Trump administration, it is a great gift to all the authoritarians around the world, because it's just the top of cynicism.
Noted.
Well, yeah, because it's...
Oh, there's a question for you before you go. Okay. Pondering Politics for $20.
Oh, my God.
Ask Hunter if he has a consistent view of support. If he supports Ukraine's defense against Russia, does he support my defense of the Rise of Skywalker as a best sequel? Okay, he just had to say that. He paid me money. So go ahead.
We're going to ignore that conversation. Mostly because, I'm not even going to do that due diligence by just talking about Star Wars right now. But yeah, we can have that conversation later. But yeah, no, to your point, it's that Putin has consistently tried to label liberal democracies as unstable, as inefficient and full of corruption. And in some ways, Donald Trump is kind of proving him right, unfortunately. Now, I wouldn't say that Putin is right about his overall message, but in this particular, case, I would say that, I would still say that we're better than Russia's oligarchy, but
many authoritarian regimes see what we see as our strengths as weaknesses and try to pretend that they are weaknesses. I remember reading a Chinese political science book from a Chinese college that was sent to me by a friend from Hong Kong, which is very interesting in that they portray multi-party systems, and in particular freedom of speech, as a fundamentally brittle and nasty thing. They like to in particular point at far-right parties in Europe, racist movements in European countries. The specific examples given in that book were Australian far-right movements, and saying, look, freedom of speech just allows this kind of sentiment to rise, allows it to come and gain political power. So it is also, when said in a certain way, it can be made to look like a convincing argument, doesn't it?
Sure, and in some ways there is certainly truth a little bit embedded in there.
But
right?
that's more the Chinese thing. The Russian thing is more sort of the cynicism stuff.
Right.
I came here mostly, I brought a Hungarian friend along with mine who unfortunately drank a little too much last night, so he's not here, to talk about the Hungarian example, and for him to talk about the Hungarian example, because I believe that is the fall of Viktor Orban is far more relevant to you Americans.
Can you actually elaborate on why for us for a moment that's true? I know I hear it a lot. I know a lot of people say this and talk about this, but why does that matter?
Because Orban was a leader who was democratically elected and just like Trump began to undermine the separations of powers in the state, undermine the judiciary, basically turned the Supreme Court into his little rubber stamp mechanism.
Executive level to people's everyday struggles, and to recognize that like when you pull money out of that system, it's also hurting everyone underneath. And it's a very common sentiment in authoritarian systems for people to just go, okay, well, yeah, sure, they're taking money, of course they would, but like, so what? Or everyone does it.
I disagreed a lot with the panel yesterday.
Okay.
I didn't have the opportunity. Well, I was a bit.
You know more about the situation, so yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
a bit more of a chicken to just question
Sure.
and ask questions. But
Sure.
So when I was in Budapest at election night with my friends in Budapest, and you know when the event happens, he's gone, right? And now, what we tend to remember in the such circumstances is always the sort of the moments, the little things, the pieces of data, stuff like that, and. The thing we never really remember from these moments is how people felt, if you want the vibes.
Yeah.
And I will tell you in all honesty, sitting in my friend's apartments in Budapest, the thing that we were mostly was incredibly anxious and terrified, because we were convinced that Orban was not going to recognize defeat. Right. We were convinced that he was going to try a coup. We had gas masks with us. We were actually talking about, okay, later today, when he announces that he doesn't recognize the election results, are we going to have to march down to Kosov Square and protest or build barricades? Is there going to be a Maidan in Budapest? That was actually the overwhelming sentiment among my friends, among everyone I knew there. And that is something that seems to be forgotten now. In the end, it didn't happen because the turnout was so overwhelmingly against him that he had no choice but to acknowledge reality, because reality was so obvious. But I choose to remember, looking back that moment, I choose to remember the absolute dreadful anxiety that me and my friends felt sitting in Budapest, because that matters. It matters not to take it for granted. And there are many more things that built up to what happened in taking down Orban. I think one of the most significant events wasn't just the corruption. It was, I'll give two examples that I think are very relevant. One is the mockery of the corruption. So something that a lot of people outside of Hungary probably didn't notice is that the country, quite literally, after 16 years of Orban, was starting to fall apart. The National Railroad Company, MÁV, became a national embarrassment. A train trip to from Vienna to Budapest is usually 3 hours. It takes 8 hours because the trains keep breaking down. And that's all across the country. Everything just keeps breaking down. The roads kept breaking down. It became a sort of common joke in Europe that in England you drive on the left side of the road, in Germany on the right side, in Hungary on what is left of the road. Because everything was just filled with potholes, roads falling apart, etc., etc. Really bad things started happening last year with the neglect on the public healthcare infrastructure, where doctors began posting pictures of cockroaches infesting hospitals, etc. And there are things that combined with all of this to sort of build up more and more resentment. And one of the things, the mockery example that I wanted to give, there is a mock party, a comedic party, fake party in Hungary called The Dog with Two Wagging Tails, which is a sort of innuendo joke. I'll leave that to your imagination. They did this very smart protest thing where they used to go to towns and places where politicians of Fidesz, of Orban's party, lived, and they filled up potholes. It cost around 50 euros to fill a pothole. So they went there, they filmed themselves, they filled the potholes etc. And one of the cheeky things they did was they went to Orban's hometown, and they filled up all the potholes in Orban's hometown, and they called the police on them, chased them out of town, and I kid you not, they ripped up the potholes again. And yeah, that ridiculous moment went very viral and was one of those contributors to eventually seeing all of it unfold. And the other one, the more important one in my humble opinion, was the Pride Parade. Last year's Pride Parade in Budapest was incredibly significant to a point that a lot of people do not acknowledge. And I'm very annoyed that people yesterday on the panel didn't acknowledge it. Because, as you all probably know, who follow politics, Orban banned the Pride Parade. And
they did it anyway.
We did it anyway. I went out there, my friends went out there, I asked
Beautiful.
my friends to go.
Yeah.
Yes. And there were, I think it was one of the largest Pride Parades ever in Europe. What the LGBT community of Hungary did, incredibly successful, and they were really great at pulling this one off, is turning LGBT issues from, being an LGBT issue into a free speech issue. And when you can brand yourself and present yourself as the defender of a principle as important as freedom of speech, you have pretty much already won the battle.
There's a lot of people who, until it becomes real to them, they won't get as engaged, right? And so if you're a straight male, LGBT, you may even support it, right? But there's a difference when you can tie that to something that is intrinsic to the person that you're talking to, such as freedom of speech, right?
Yes.
Because we all speak. We all want to be heard. We all want to have our voice. And hey, this government is shutting down people's ability to speak out. That hits different for a lot of people. And it's just one of those ways where we can broaden our messages and broaden our messaging in order to just get a wider tent. I think that's a good thing overall.
It was also a very terrifying moment, I have to tell you all that.
What was the scariest part?
Because the Orban government had decided that they were going to beat the shit out of the people attending the parade.
Oh, damn.
They expected 100,000 attendees, so they shipped in riot police officers from all across the country. They had, I think, a total of 70,000 cops throughout the city in heavy gear. They wanted to beat the shit out of people.
But there were too many, or?
Yeah, suddenly, I think it was
That's great.
between 400 and 500,000 people marched through the city.
Yeah.
All of the European media was there, which is very important, that they went out of their way. Also very significant that members of European parliaments, from Austria to Ireland to France to Spain, came to attend the event, Sweden as well, as far as I know. And they lost sort of the courage to do that. But that was the plan, and when you marched at that parade, you realized, like, I have only been at one Pride Parade before.
Yeah.
But you noticed it. The cops were ready to beat the shit out of people.
Yeah, I think that's such a good example of the duty that the average person has, right? That like that so many people are like, well, what does it matter if I go, right? But if everyone has that sentiment, then the crowd shrink from 700,000 to 40,000.
And the duty you have to others.
Yes, of course.
I may not live in Hungary. I'm not a Hungarian citizen.
Right.
I live in a neighboring country.
Uh-huh.
There are people who flew in from Ireland, from Iceland, from Sweden, from Norway, from everywhere. And that is something that is spreading increasingly in Europe, a sort of understanding that you have to stand up for your that you share your values with others, and that you don't just stand up for your values at home. You have to stand up for your values and the values of others in their homeland,
and do so quietly from afar. That like you have to
physically
be there.
Posting doesn't count.
Yeah,
Put your body on the spot.
Right,
yes.
right. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful sentiment. That like, I mean, obviously it's horrifying, but in that moment of horrifying, there's a beauty.
It's scary.
There. Yeah, no,
it's
absolutely.
Scary. Not necessarily horrifying. I mean, I keep thinking back, like what I mentioned earlier, with the fear that I remember on that night, because the thing that I took away from that moment was sort of never take these things for granted.
Sure.
Because I noticed that in the panel yesterday. I noticed that with conversations that the political scientists have doing the analysis of what happened in Hungary. They try to find like the theory of how it came to be.
Yeah.
Pinpoint the mechanisms, the one reason why everything collapsed. But they never, and under all of that, there's this undercurrent, this sort of assumption of there is this one thing you can do, there's this one force of history that will
one neat trick, right?
Yeah,
one neat trick.
That's not the case.
Right.
It's on you. I keep imagining what would have happened if 1 million Hungarians who usually don't vote had decided not to vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What would have happened if... It's also not just on the people who are with us on this, but also on the people who are against us on this. What if Orban had, in fact, decided to declare that that the election was invalid? You know, I keep thinking back to that a lot.
Yeah.
This is what I was saying when I was holding down the fort. Like, this is the essence of liberalism, is a principled commitment to egalitarianism. You can't just stand up for yourself. You have to see yourself in everyone and see everyone is just as important and engage for that. Like, if you have to do it for everyone, and everyone needs to, and together we can do wonderful things, and it just leads to the best outcomes for everyone.
There's a Czech philosopher called Jan Patočka from the 1960s who is somewhat liked among liberals in Central Europe, in the Czech Republic, in Austria, in Hungary, etc., who wrote that the foundation of all political sort of engagement should be what he called the solidarity of the shattered.
Interesting.
So people who experience a shock.
Yeah.
Write it down. Solidarity of the shattered. Jan Patočka.
It's a good it's a good one. Yeah.
P-A-T-O. What's it?
C-H-K-A?
C-H-K. Patočka. No, or is it CZ? I think the...
start with that, and then solidarity of the shattered.
I think it's CK, Patočka.
I'm sure if you look up solidarity of the shattered, it'll come up.
I think the Polish is CS, and the Czech is just a C, yeah. That all politics, according to him, brings out the solidarity of the shattered, people who experience a devastating moment of which they think they have no control over their lives and how society unfolds, to connect these people together,
right,
into a solidarity of the shattered.
Let me take a moment now that I've calmed down a little bit and I got some of these super chats up on my screen. So I'm not ignoring you, chat. I promise. It's just been
we're just ignoring
day. So first of all, for the tier 2 memberships, Riz, what the fuck for member for 6 months? Kingly debate moderating Kingly, true. $2 from Opno. Whick, please God, make Steven take off that tie. No. Odashara with 20 WhickTV gift memberships. Look at you go. Look, this kind of support. This wasn't free, gang, okay? I had to get the microphones and equipment, and I had to borrow from She's Alice, whose camera we're using, and other gear from Bishop, right? I have to borrow gear from that. Like, this wasn't free. Help me out here, okay? Thank you for the 20 gift memberships. Okay, 5 gift memberships from even more Jimmies. Well, I'm glad you had that many Jimmies. $20 from Pottering Politics. Bill Kristol supports abolishing ICE, which is based. Ask him if he also supports Democrats expanding the Supreme Court. I did. I got that from you. Okay, $5 from Caramel Cold Brew. Joe Biden will outlive Trump. Well, we'll see. Super Duper Scooper. Tier 1 membership. $10, just $10. No message from Michael. I like those kinds of super chats. $5, another one of those. Moped Mike, thank you. Sapient Green, I'll give you some money, but remember to share with the rest of the class. I'll get him something nice. How's that? $10 from Canada, the Gazinator. £2 from Dottie Girl. Well done, Wick. Thank you. Ekem, $2 more. This TED Talk is fucking based. True. And we already asked the $20 from Pottering Politics there. Benji Boy with $10. We need to take back Hassan Trump derangement syndrome for anybody in their cult.
No.
No.
I hate that term. I hate the term Trump derangement syndrome. And I hate the term Hassan derangement syndrome, or whatever you want to name it.
True.
It reminds me of 1970s Soviet psychiatry, where people who were political dissidents were declared to be mentally ill. I hate doing that. You should never declare someone you disagree with to just be mentally ill. You're not a psychiatrist. Shut up.
A lot of people in different factions of the left result to different insults that are in ways like ableist or offensive about other people they don't like. And I really don't think we need to stoop. I will call people a coward. Like, there are ways, we don't have to go low in those respects. Like, don't give an inch on anything like that.
People disagree with you. They're not mentally ill. People have their convictions.
Yeah.
You might think they are misguided, but they believe what they argue for.
Yeah.
They're not mentally ill.
I call people wrong. I will call people a coward. I won't call them a slur.
Gang, just to let you know, if we can get $500 today, you'll see me dance, okay? You'll see me get down. You'll see me boogie.
We got to see that.
Okay?
I got to
have
see that.
And I'll get as many people to dance with me as well. Maybe even Steven, okay? Maybe we can get him in a dance-off. Whick versus Destiny. Dance-off edition. It could happen. You don't know.
And it can't be understated how much work Whick especially has put into all of this last night and this morning, trying to get all of this up and running. It's been very stressful.
It's okay. It's okay. Back to the topics, though. Enough shilling for now. Back to the topics. So we talked about why it's important for Americans to care about liberalism abroad. So when I look at what Trump has done to our standing abroad, however, for very good reason, there are many people who are in Europe and who are in Asia and other countries who are looking at America and it's like, we're now very wary of doing any business with you.
That's
right?
why I'm here.
That's why you're here. How do we fix it, Kraut? How do we fix it?
I don't know. I'm here to find my answers myself.
Fair.
I lived through the build-up to the Iraq War and the end of the Iraq War, right? The resulting chaos. And I can tell you, it's never been this anti-American in Europe. The sentiment. It's really widespread. I'm probably, I asked a lot of friends of mine from Finland, from the Czech Republic, if they were interested in coming out here. Very few Europeans here. A lot of European liberals have given up on the United States. There is to a degree this sentiment in Europe that, okay, we need to stand on our own 2 feet now. We need to build up our own, defense, be more autonomous in geopolitics.
I don't think that's necessarily
that's not a bad
bad.
thing.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily
bad. It's not a contradictory thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you have to abandon the United States as a friend, an ally, and a partner. I believe in our alliance. It's why I'm here. And I'm trying to make the context that I can bring back to people in Europe to say, hey, this is worth maintaining. And who knows, maybe next year we'll have an event like this in Brussels, which I can help organize for all of us.
That'd be
and we'll
great.
fly all that.
Is the anti-American sentiment, I mean, is it at its core anti-Trump? Or is there something maybe a little bit more broad to it?
Depends.
Sure.
Depends. Some people may have been, for some people it's more Trump. For others, they would use Trump to say that America has always been like this, which I don't necessarily agree with.
Which is cowardly on our pacts, on our truces, or what in particular is there like?
The antagonizing, like the Greenland issue.
Oh, sure,
was probably one of the most worst things. That he did, yeah.
And it's become a lot more commonplace to joke about Canada and annexing.
The crazy thing is how much Canada is now tied in to Europe.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Armenia recently opened accession talks to join the European Union, and it was crazy watching the news conference, the conference where all of that was decided and voted on, because Canada was there. The Canadians were represented, and I was like, why are they there? What is their interest in the accession process of Armenia?
Right.
Why do they get a say in that? That's
because they need to
strange.
leave the North American little pocket that we have. Yeah, very interesting.
$2 or £2, I should say, from Riz. What the fuck? Kraut is so incredibly based. Also, she's right.
True.
I'm sorry, you weren't in that one.
I don't think I was part of that conversation.
$50 from Lawson Harrison. All you libs are just mad that Piker is better at capitalism than you. Okay. Thank you for the.
I think.
Go ahead.
No, just what a they're telling on themselves right there, where like essentially all they're looking for is the monetary goals right here. I think we could all easily make more money if we were a little bit more
if we were willing to
impassioned, a little bit more, not impassioned,
stretch our morals a little bit more.
I don't think he's better than us.
Yes,
I don't think he's
literally
better than
sell
us.
out.
I don't think it's virtuous to be like, oh, I'm better than you, or that person's better than you.
I think he could be
That's
making a
liberal.
lot more money if he made his streams about painting his fingernails and that kind of stuff. If he was just a simple lifestyle blogger about his fashion choices and all that. Don't know why he gives us his political opinions.
You know what?
I don't think that would make him more
psychoanalyze
money.
Hassan Piker. I cannot.
I
I cannot
far
say.
left,
We
center
have
left, and right influencer, all terrible fashion. What is with that?
We have
$5. I was told to buy a suit coming here because
I was told business casual, but I could.
I was told business casual.
Thank you for wearing
This
the
is just
tin I
how I
gave
feel.
you.
No, absolutely.
Thank you.
I love this.
Thank you.
I've been wearing it all week. Oh,
Explain what that is to the audience.
I went to Brussels and I got some US EU flag pins. I'll get closer to the camera.
You show the camera.
See it. Yeah. For when I arrive here, because I was hoping to hand them out to Europeans, but there's not that many Europeans here. And they're kind of large in stock because not a lot of people in Europe are buying them apparently right now for some reasons.
Okay, tier 2 membership from Bathory Dusk. Canadian Fries Pod, $5 Canadian, turned down for what? And then just $50 from Frenzified, and I appreciate that. So we are $380 away from our goal here. So just letting you know, and we got some time. We got some great content coming up.
So
once Destiny gets here, I could make more. I could make more. You should. Live streaming is much better than video essays when it comes to income.
I love my crafter.
Yeah, but yes,
it's hard.
Look, I wish I had the ability to do that. Okay, yes, we're waiting for Destiny to come back. Once Destiny gets here, we're going to get into it with Ukraine, with the colonel from the NATO colonel.
I love how professional all of this is. How you have
Hamilton,
someone
yes, Mr.
who
Hamilton.
gives you
Colonel
notes
Hamilton.
and everything.
Yeah.
This is really...
Yes.
Make it look like a
$5 from Natural Phenomenon. You're doing a great job hosting. If you're on the back foot, I can't tell. Oh, maybe you could have told earlier, but yeah, it's been a lot. But look, I'm an entertainer at heart. I wanted to be a rock star growing up, okay? I was built for the stage. But here we are doing our thing. I think that these conversations in these kinds of environments are so important and vital to going forward. Like, a lot of the time we spend arguing, right? Arguing with the other side, arguing with MAGA, arguing with leftists, arguing with all these other people. We need to get people on board with having discussions in party, in house, to learn how we're going to deal with the issues of the day coming forward. We just do. And I think that this has been a great experience, even off camera, right? I've had some great conversations with people from all over the world, right? And I talked to one of the guys from Hungary, right? That was with Kraut.
Gabba was here, yes.
Yes, Gabba. And
he was heavy drinking yesterday.
and even then, though, he was able to kind of articulate, like, how they took down Orban. And that is inspiring to me, at least as an American. So, yeah.
I think I have to make way for the next guest.
Yes, well,
oh, yeah. Well, are we?
Yeah,
I think
we're waiting.
we've got a little bit of time.
We got a little bit of time. We're killing the time.
It's going to be like 5 minutes.
We are time murderers. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
He's just finding his way to leave.
I'll reiterate my point.
Bored of us already?
He's going to go set up his own.
Stephen Destiny Bonnell, Hassan Piker, and Asmongold, the three biggest political influencers encapsulating the space right now, all have terrible fashion. And the more they try, the worse they are at it. This is unacceptable. This is the conversation we need to be having. This should be a panel. It's terrible. They're terrible.
We have other interests, if you will, to occupy our attention. Which would you rather, good fashion or good content?
So in my defense,
You see how he worded that, where he just implied that good fashion isn't good content. But I low-key agree with Whick, so let's get on to that.
I was picked up in my defense. I was picked up at the airport by a friend of mine, by a woman who said, "You can't go to this event like this." She picked all of this.
Well, she did a great
very
job.
sweet. I think it
You
looks
look
great.
dapper,
It looks good.
Sir.
Okay.
We got 5 WhickTV gift memberships from Tollybots. Thank you, Tolly. Really appreciate you. We have $5 from Bella Beans. You're doing great, Whick. Thank you. A question from FDR in a mech suit. For everyone not from DC, which I think is all of us, how do you like the city so far? The best pizza is Timber in Petworth.
It's like Moscow.
It's like Moscow. I don't know. Is that a compliment?
No, like both and Berlin. It's like Moscow and Berlin.
Okay.
All 3 cities were built on a swamp. Cities built on swamps are humid in the summer. Very hot and humid in the summer.
Yeah, I was not expecting. I saw that the temperature was like 85 degrees or something. I'm like, I can go on a mile walk easily to get to this place for my hotel room. No, I cannot. I am not used to this wet heat.
To be clear,
it is so humid.
We also have, and I this got on my phone alert today, like one of the worst air quality in record. I guess right now from the wildfires in Canada or something. It's really going down here. But I checked it out. It's pretty bad. So yeah, it's not doing great right now.
It's so
but
humid.
I will take that pizza recommendation into consideration. because I'm going to be hungry after giving you all these content, gang. Okay, I'm going to be hungry.
I have actually grown up around here.
Oh yeah.
I grew up like with divorced parents. So I spent like half my time in like Northern Virginia, and when I'd be just bored, I would love to take the metro into DC and just explore, walk around. There's some good and some bad stuff about DC. The Smithsonian museums are some of like the best things on earth.
100%.
Free museums, all kinds of different topics. Wonderful. I had beef with the security guard at the Native American Museum right after it was built, because that was one, I think this was a mistake because of like the content was more mature or gruesome, like some dark parts of history. They did try to age gate that, which I think stopped some people from seeing that history. And that age gate was 13 years old. And I know this because I was 16 and I tried to go there when it opened and they wouldn't let me in and they didn't believe me. And that was very upsetting. And I still haven't been back to that one. And I should.
So one of the core founding moments to your personality, perhaps.
Yes. So, but the Air and Space Museum is my all-time favorite, and it's beautiful, and you should go there.
Check it out,
such a fascinating. You get that sense of like the human spirit that we want to work together and explore and see what's over the next hill, and we can do that by coming together. And there's something so beautiful about that. Like it just resonates with us as like members of a social species. Highly recommend.
But yeah, my wife, she went to George Washington, which is like a mile away, and I visited her maybe like a year or two ago. So this isn't the first trip that I had to DC.
Okay.
But yeah, we just did trips to the Smithsonian's, and like we went to the Holocaust Museum and the
excellent museum.
Yeah, that one. I mean, it was horrifying.
Yeah.
It was also. I mean, it was so hard because I have family that came from last name Kozak, came from Eastern Europe to escape it, and just having those. I love it. I mean, I don't love it, but I love it. It's you should go if you're ever in DC. Go to the museums because they're incredible over here.
My first time in DC and my first time in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
You should check out the museums. They're incredible.
They're all free. Yeah.
Unfortunately, don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
No, sure.
$5 from Gronman. Everyone should read the Wall Street Journal story, the Canadian who steered Europe away from the U.S., especially to see how much of a cuck the UK is. Okay. So
I mean, we all kind of knew that.
Strong words.
We proved that in
being
1776.
put out.
Hell yeah.
USA,
still, like,
USA,
as much as
4th.
we need to ingratiate ourselves a little bit more with the EU, there's still that anti-Brit mentality here in the U.S., and I'm never going to get rid of it, really.
I will maintain my American, we rock over England, even at our lowest point of shame. When we had
Okay. So he's almost here?
Yeah.
He's almost here then?
Look, even at our lowest, when we had Donald J. Trump, a huge point of shame, then England elected as their prime minister a worse, generic brand Donald Trump.
Sure.
So we're still winning. We're still a point ahead.
What are we talking about,
You want to introduce
guys?
yourself?
Hi, I'm Stardust. I make video essays occasionally on the YouTube channel Stardust Officially. I IRL stream and live stream on Stardust IRL on YouTube, and you can find me tweeting all the time for no reason on Twitter. Tweets from Star. So yeah.
Cool.
I know you.
You do.
Known you for years.
I've known you too for years,
Yeah.
and I know you, and I know you.
Mm-hmm.
You've had to tell me your name 5 times. I'm so sorry, but I know it.
We've been on a decent amount of debate panels together,
We
but that's
have.
okay.
I'm
that's
really
okay.
bad
No,
with names.
valid. It's fine. It's fair.
He's literally wearing his name.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. Is it's right here, but
Yeah, I'm
it's
sorry.
okay.
I'm
It's
just
okay.
so terrible with names.
It's okay.
I really
It
am.
happens.
You all crossed your names out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't mind.
Yeah, a
anyone.
couple people have been doing that.
I was just grabbing and showing people my awesome epic pregnant bod right now. I'm not pregnant, by the way. But Anyway, sorry. Continue with what you were talking about before I came here and hijacked it.
Anti-EU sentiment, and that some of it is unfortunately a little bit based.
The Brit box.
Yeah.
So what part of it is based? I don't know much about.
No. I'm just saying. It's hard to not a little bit hate the Brits when you're in America, especially just considering what happened in 1776.
You hear the ones that sound like they ride horses. The Brits there's a specific type of Brit. They sound like they ride horses.
Sure.
What do you mean?
The way their accent, they sound like they ride horses, and it's
a very posh accent.
It's very charismatic, but also simultaneously very, very fucking annoying. And you know who you are. You guys sound like you ride horses for a living or something. I don't know. There's a type of
I
British
get
accent
what you're saying, but it's not like they're currently riding horses. That they like have
that
horses.
they do it in their pastime, in
Sure.
their free time. Yeah.
Sure.
And
like
I don't
here's
like
the thing.
horses.
Here's the thing.
I'm
Like I
scared
said,
of them.
I really want more of like an EU unity right now, and I really do want England and us to have a lot more be closer allies than we
The
are
Scots
right now.
really like you saying that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the
yeah.
Scottish. They're so great.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
I like
But-
Brexit in the sense of they deserve it. Yeah.
so funny.
When you look at it
That's
from
so
that point
funny.
of view, it's the greatest thing ever. a
Yeah.
country.
So explain to me what's going on with the EU right now.
Well,
That's a very broad statement.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's a broad statement. Obviously, I don't think anything like technically is happening right now. But like on a more macro scale, I think that a lot of people are there's an anti-US.
I think we're in a generational shift in the weird one. Like you Americans, right up until the 1860s, you can actually look this up in like how newspapers are written
Americans.
at the time. You didn't refer to
You're
yourself
not
as
American?
Americans.
I am American.
Oh, okay. So what?
I'm just standing up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Feels like we're under attack.
Back in the day, you guys
We're not under
poisoning the
attack.
well preemptively.
Hey,
It's okay.
We're not under attack.
Back in the day, you guys used to not refer to yourself as Americans. You would say your region is where you're from. You would say, I'm a Midwesterner.
Oh, interesting.
I'm a New Englander. I'm a
Interesting.
Southerner. I'm from this and that, you know.
Mhm.
And then after the Civil War, people started traveling more. During the Civil War, people traveled more. There were migrations that happened during the Civil War. And suddenly you created this identity.
And I'm sure that it's probably largely from the fact that the Civil War was also to contain itself as America, and a lot of
Yes.
the reason why we brought the
Yes.
Confederate back is because it's your part of America too. I'm
Yes.
sure that has something to do with it as well.
And
But-
we Europeans are currently in a similar thing.
Oh, sure.
In that the generation after me, the one born in 2000,
Yeah.
they're like the first generation to know the continent only without borders. And if you go to Europe, you will find anyone living everywhere, anywhere, at any time. You will
Right.
find Spanish people. Like I've got a Spanish friend who studied in Brussels and now works in Brussels. People date across borders more often than ever before.
Right.
There are cross-national marriages more and more. It has become normal to speak at least 2 to 3 languages.
Right.
You can go through this at a long list. This will be the first purely European generation.
Sure.
And it's creating something very new that hasn't existed. Like the EU before them was just a set of laws and institutions, structures, right? Government bureaucracies
Right.
and laws. Now we are getting a European identity.
Right.
These young people now growing up, having their first kids with people from foreign countries, living across multiple countries in their lives, they will create an understanding of themselves as European. And it's also a volatile time, because that European identity will be shaped by them, and what values that identity represents will also
Right.
be shaped with it. Will it be like your American identity, or will it be something else? Like,
Mhm.
I'm worried that it will become nationalistic, right-wingish. Worst case scenario, even ethnic. That would be the worst case scenario, in my opinion. But
Sure.
it is something that is now being created, and something that people should have a little more interest in.
Yeah,
That is
sure.
interesting. I
would-
never thought about
I
that.
would say that
Cool.
considering how cross-cultural it is, it seems unlikely that it would be so identitarian, that it would be so ethnic.
Oh yeah, no,
I
well,
guess.
people would say that there is a European identity, and what they mean by that is
Sure, is white.
you
Right.
know.
Yeah,
No,
but,
of
but
course.
then if you look back, like all of Europe was warring with each other for, thousands of years, right? So, I mean, I think there's an easy argument against that, isn't there? Or no?
Well, there's also an easy argument against that by just saying that black people have lived in Portugal for 600 years. It's the longest continuously existing
Also,
black community.
I also
in
feel
Europe.
like easy answers exist, and that doesn't necessarily just shut down a movement, right? I
Yeah,
would
that's
say
true.
that, like,
Yeah, for
you know,
sure.
it's pretty easy to say that Donald Trump is a bad president. It's pretty easy to say that racism is bad. It's
Yeah.
pretty easy
Facts
to say a
haven't
lot of
stopped
these.
them before.
And also
Yeah.
one thing that is really
Facts
helpful.
don't really stop much, right? Yeah.
One thing that is really helpful is that our lingua franca, our common language, is English.
English, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that used to be a problem when Britain was still in the European Union. Everyone would sort of assert or accuse of saying, the English would dominate this project. But
Mhm.
now that the Britons are out of the EU, everyone is just sort of accepting, yeah, this is useful.
It's so interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting that the EU doesn't even have an English-speaking nation, and yet it's the lingua franca
It is a
nonetheless.
yeah.
That's so funny. That's so I've never. That's a, I don't know, a little interesting quirk. Do you think that's more of like an English influence or an American influence? Because it's
Honestly,
obviously
American.
the British had
Honestly
an empire,
American.
but
I think that's American
But
cultural influence.
we've exported so much media.
Yes.
You know that like our entertainment.
Yeah, people learn English for
alone.
entertainment.
Yeah.
You know what's really interesting about that is that you see the disappearing of like regional accents in America, right? Because of how much media has had an influence on Americans.
Right.
So I wonder if you'll start to see like the disappearing of like the different English accents in
It's
Europe,
hard to say. A lot of the reasons is to sorry, I'm a little bit. I love linguistics. A lot of the reasons as to why.
Oh, sorry.
A lot of the reasons as to why there's so many dialects in England and there's not that many dialects in the U.S., even though we are so much larger and we're so much more populous, is a lot to do with the age of England. It's far, far, far older, and just it's a lot more pocketed. I'm going to go on a rant that maybe no one cares about, so maybe we
I
can
think that's
pivot back
interesting.
into the other direction.
England's accent diversity is fascinating because every 50 miles or so, and it's
no one could tell that I'm from. I'm born and raised somewhere that's like. I'm terrible at geography. I don't know how far away the West Coast is.
I know a Hungarian who married a Pole and lives with her in Spain, and they're having a kid, and they have decided to raise their kids in English, Spanish, Polish, and leave Hungarian out. So
Wow.
in that
Excellent.
sense, it could be that in that sense languages could disappear through or become less prevalent.
Of course.
Intermarriage.
Yeah, and that's just a natural evolution of like having more porous boundaries, is that eventually some languages will start dissolving, and whether or not that's a good thing is a hard conversation, because like obviously when some languages dissolve, I'm just going to go on my linguistics rant right now. I'm sorry. I love linguistics.
All right, I have to go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Kraut. See you around. We can move away from the linguistics rant. Sorry.
Yes.
We
I'm
don't
not
know.
European. I am out of my depth.
No. Just
Yeah.
I just find it so interesting. I'm born and raised 1,000 miles away from here, and yet I sound exactly like everyone else from DC.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think TV might have helped.
No,
accents,
exactly.
yeah.
No, 100%.
definitely
Radio,
helps.
TV.
Because I grew up in
podcasts.
LA, where it's like, well, everyone speaks there,
Everyone's
here.
like, hey
so
guys,
it's like, yeah,
come in and subscribe.
for sure.
That's our new national language.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know what specifically we want to talk about. Does anyone have any like burning questions, burning topics?
I'm gonna look up the chat on.
Let's look at what the chat's
YouTube.com/WhickTV.
talking about.
I saw lots of people were excited that Stardust got here, and
Guys,
now
we're going to
bunch
have
of
a
people-
bird discussion soon. There's another bird person in the audience. Not audience.
Bird
but
person?
There's another bird person.
Are you
who-
interested in birds? Is that what you're?
Excellent.
I have pet birds. Hello?
Everyone
I
said
don't
it
know.
kinda.
I'm sorry.
She's another bird
Tashika's
person.
here. How's it going?
Bird conversation.
We're going to have a bird conversation now.
sister.
Tashika, you got to introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I am Tashikann, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all that jazz. I am a political debater, commentator, bitch. That's what I am.
Same. Real recognizes real.
And I am also a huge bird enthusiast. I myself have a cockatiel. And
I
my
have-
bird sister here
yes.
also has, what, 2 parakeets?
3 parakeets.
Three
I used to have 4. Everybody knows about Rabby, unfortunately. He had genetic issues, so he had to be euthanized. But I kept him along, for a very long time. He was my pet soulmate. But I have 3 parakeets now. And yeah, they're my babies, and I'm just crazy about birds. And you're crazy about birds too.
Very crazy about birds.
Yeah.
Very crazy.
Yeah.
Growing up, I had a cat and a bird. And then one day, I had a very happy cat and no bird. And I can't prove anything, like in a court of law, but, I have some theories.
What kind of bird did you have?
I think it was a little parakeet.
that sounds a little
They love
circumstantial if you
parakeets.
ask me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like circumstantial evidence. That's all I have.
Yeah.
It's like one feather outside of the cage and a purring cat.
No, that's so
That's what my crimes-
sad.
yeah. So
I've never owned a bird.
There's a small chance it flew out the window, and that's what I like to do. I think the cat tried, and the bird got away.
Right. There's reasonable doubt still.
Yeah.
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 Damn. Yeah, so my cousin sometimes will bring her cat over, and my birds, they kind of free roam during the day. And her cat's really fat though, so even if they can't help it. They're cats. It's their animal. They're in their instinct when they see small things moving fast, they get excited. But even though he gets excited by them, he's too fat. He can't get them. He's obese. Yeah.
That's a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one time Zephyr actually flew away.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it was in the beginning of winter. And I had completely accepted that he was gone forever and that he was going to freeze to death. But then, like a couple hours later, my mom had gone out and she started playing videos of him chirping.
Aww.
And like a narcissist, he would respond to himself.
Yeah.
And it was to the point where like my entire neighborhood was like calling for him.
Yeah.
And it was to the point where he was sitting, and obviously chat, I know a lot of people are watching, so please don't report me to the Philadelphia board. But
All right, we got to pull away from this riveting bird
shit,
content.
He bit through the power line and it blew up. Thank you.
Jesus.
Top that next crew.
All right.
I don't know about that.
Some riveting content.
Okay.
We're turning the tide over.
Gang. Okay. Great. Okay. Great. So, excuse kind of like the last minute nature of this, but me and Destiny, streamer Stephen Benella, will be talking to Army Colonel Robert, what was his last name? Hamilton. Robert Hamilton. And we will be going over foreign policy issues, Ukraine, and whether or not it's important as liberals to stand with Ukraine and how we can stand with Ukraine and all these things. Should be a great conversation. He'll be here any second, and then we'll kind of have you on. They're all getting their things ready. But, okay, if you guys are ready, once you guys just come on in, have a seat, pick your favorite. Yeah, wherever you like. Okay, well, first of all, thank you for agreeing to do this. Welcome to the show. Can you tell my audience who you are, what you do, and why we should listen to you?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation. I'm Bob Hamilton. I'm a retired Army officer, retired in 2018 as a colonel. I did most of my career as what we call a foreign area officer, so specializing in a region of the world. For me, it was Russia and Eurasia. Currently, I run a think tank, a small nonprofit called Delphi Global Research Center. We just had our first anniversary, 1st of July. We launched last year, and we do research on Russia and Eurasia. We do a lot of work on the war in Ukraine specifically.
Excellent. What kind of work, when you say we do work on the war in Ukraine specifically, can you elaborate on that a bit? What do you mean?
Absolutely. So we're a research organization, right? We're a think tank. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit think tank. When I say work, I mean research. So we do we do reports, we do articles, we do field research. I'm in Ukraine usually 3 or 4 times a year doing research. I have a book project that Ukraine is part of the book. And then I'm there just to do research on the war, to catch up with the war, to see what's going on. We also have several Ukrainian fellows, so several people that scholars that affiliate with us who live in Ukraine or are from Ukraine, and they write for us pretty regularly. So, look, we believe the war in Ukraine is the most important thing happening for U.S. national security in the world right now.
Even more important than Iran?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Look, it's been so. First of all, Iran was a war of choice.
Fair.
You know, the U.S. and Israel made the choice to start a war against Iran. And you can argue, look, the Iranian regime is odious, and there's a lot of reasons you can argue that it shouldn't be in power. But ironically, it's probably more powerful and more entrenched now than it was when we started the war on February 28th. And so, actually, February 28th seems to be an interesting day for Trump's decisions. That was the day he kicked Zelensky out of the Oval Office last year. And this year was the day he started the war with Iran. So I don't know what's going on with the last day in February for him, but not his best decisions.
Can I ask, you mentioned this being an important conflict. I would obviously agree. How do you communicate that to the average American, especially right now when we feel like we're tending in this more kind of like isolationist direction where we don't want to have anything to do with NATO or the rest of the world? Like, why should an average American care about what's happening in Ukraine or Europe at all?
Yeah, I mean, whether you want to argue in terms of power or principle, right? Whether in terms of international law or just, balance of power, realist politics, it's the most important thing going on in the world today, I think, from both of those perspectives. If you're looking at it from the perspective of principle or law, I mean, it was a blatant violation of the UN Charter. Ukraine did not threaten, had not threatened, and could not threaten Russia. Russia launched an invasion of a neighbor and is carrying out it's not an effective genocidal campaign, but certainly the ends of the campaign are to eliminate Ukraine's independent identity and eliminate Ukraine's statehood. And so if you believe in the idea of a rules-based order, which, we're here at Libcon, this is one of the major sort of tenets, I think, of international liberalism is that there are rules, right? There are, yes, there's no hegemonic power. There's, nothing that there's sometimes those sanctions for breaking the rules are not serious sanctions for breaking the rules, but there are rules that most states should abide by most of the time, and they help make conflict and horrible things like happening in Ukraine now less likely. And so, and if you look at from the perspective of power, Russia is the only existential threat the United States faces right now. It's the only country on the planet with the ability to wipe the U.S. off the map via its, 5,500 nuclear weapons, 1,800 deployed nuclear weapons, right? China can't do that.
Go ahead.
So Carney notably said, I don't know which European speech this was, but basically that to some extent we had all kind of bought into this collective fiction about a rules-based international order that in some ways, inarguably, the United States kind of felt itself to be above or around sometimes. Sometimes, I don't know if I'd say for better or for worse, maybe just for worse. Now you've seen, I think it was Rubio who just came out and said that we need to work on abolishing or getting rid of the ICC because it undermines the United States. How do we as a country and then as an alliance for NATO and then as a Western world emerge from this presidency with anybody having faith that the United States will adhere to any kind of rules-based order if we're 5% inflation away from electing another autocratic dictator who wants to abandon the entire rest of the world? Like, yeah, what does that look like?
It's a fair question. The rules-based order, the liberal world order, whatever you want to call it, was never perfect, right? States did go around the rules, and powerful states went around the rules more than most, and the United States is not innocent of that, right? We have gone around the rules of the institutions that we largely created in the aftermath of the Second World War when we've decided that we had a sort of critical national security interest in doing so. But I think the U.S. has generally respected the rules most of the time, and for a big country, that made it a little different than the Chinas and the Russias of the world. And so in terms of Ukraine, or in terms of, another reason why, a power reason why I think it's important is it's been a core tenet of U.S. national security policy since the end of the Second World War that, the supercontinent of Eurasia is so big, so populous, and is so endowed with resources that if any one power were to capture all or most of it, it would be the end of U.S. it would be a grave threat to U.S. national security and an end of U.S. autonomy. And so Russia doesn't right now look like it has the capability to become the hegemon of Eurasia, but it certainly has the intention. And so we should care about this. And that's we should be in lockstep with our European partners and not trying to cut them loose.
You mentioned earlier that Russia is one of the only countries on Earth that poses an existential threat to America. Especially at the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine, at least the invasion of Ukraine, many were saying, well, we can't get involved. We can't show support. We can't give them weapons because it will escalate and Russia will use those nukes to end us. What do you think about that argument, and how would you counter it if you disagree?
Yeah, look, I think the postmortem on Biden administration Ukraine policy was adequate.
Adequate. Talk about damning with faint praise, but go ahead. Yeah.
Look, I talk to Ukrainians a lot, and I'm there a lot. Jake Sullivan may be the most unpopular man in Ukraine because they all believe, and I think they believe with some evidence, he was the voice in the administration counseling restraint, counseling, don't provoke the Russians. And that's what they believe in Ukraine. And I don't have any evidence to counter that. I think that's probably largely accurate. So in the beginning of the war, I understand that it didn't make sense to give the Ukrainians things like Patriot and HIMARS and ATACMS and M1s and Bradleys, because if you really thought the war was going to be over in 2 or 3 weeks, we didn't have time to get them there, train them on them, for them to make a difference. And then when the war is over, the Russians would capture all those things. But it became apparent by the end of March 2022, so a month or so into the war, 6 weeks, maybe early April, Russia was not going to achieve its objectives. This was not going to be a short war, and Ukraine actually had the capability potentially to reverse Russia's invasion and to cause a collapse of the Russian military in Ukraine. And it very nearly did that in August or September of 2022, but it didn't have most of the U.S. equipment that's there now. We were just too slow. In fact, I was just at over at U.S. Army Europe and U.S. European Command a couple of weeks ago, talking to people for a research project, senior officials who were involved in the U.S. effort to assist Ukraine, and they said we were a little too precious about our rules early on with the Ukrainians. We didn't take risks. We followed the rules a little too closely.
So, yeah, if we had immediately started training them up on these advanced weapon systems, you think, walk us through that alternate history.
So
here.
look, there's an argument to be made that once it became apparent this was not going to be a 2-week war, and that Russia was on its heels and really didn't have a good solution for how to achieve its objectives, had we, put the pedal to the floor, full court press, gotten everything we could get into Ukraine, into everything that's there now, Patriots, HIMARS, ATACMS, M1s, Bradleys, all the big systems, the intelligence sharing. That had we done that in like April and May and June, that by August, September, when the Ukrainians did the Kharkiv and Kherson counteroffensives, they could have done it with U.S. equipment and U.S. training, and our NATO allies, I'm sure, would also have been. They're going to follow the U.S. lead.
Certainly.
Right? So if we do it, then the Germans and the Poles and others are going to feel like they have sort of top cover to do the same. So there's an argument to be made that Ukraine could have caused the collapse of the Russian army in the late summer, early fall of 2022. Then the question becomes, and this is what people in the administration were worried about, will they use a nuclear weapon, right? I mean, counterfactual, we know they didn't. I don't think they ever would have. One, there's not a lot of military utility to it. Or even if they did, I don't know if it would have arrested a military collapse in Ukraine for the Russians.
I guess when I look at that time period, one thing that's very annoying to me is in the United States, especially after we'd already had so many years of Trump, it feels like we've had Trump for the last 12 years or whatever. Like it's everything is Trump. Every single thing in the United States became the most heated policy dispute ever. If Zohran Mamdani were to tweet out, don't drink bleach, it's bad for you, I think a lot of Republicans would die in the United States just drinking bleach, just despite the Democratic messaging on it. It's just so unbelievable. And I can't imagine being a Ukrainian soldier that is, in a ditch in a hole somewhere fighting, and you see for some reason in the United States funding to Ukraine is being paired and held up by immigration reform or the Republicans who, I grew up, my mom is Cuban, I grew up in a very Republican household, and my mom, she flew in the Looking Glass mission for the Air Force, so flying over and and I'd heard so much about Russia, and even watching my parents flip their opinion on Russia not being a big deal. And I think a lot of it came from the impeachment and everything else, that Republicans just couldn't talk about Russia anymore. They didn't want to hear it. It feels so much like there was a lot of domestic issues that weren't really related to Ukraine that ended up ultimately stifling our ability to respond effectively, I guess, as a country, which is very frustrating to me. I feel like we should have been very unified on that front.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was a no-brainer, and it's, again, part of the reason we started the think tank I'm in now is because we were getting pressure after Trump came back to not do any work on Ukraine or do much less work on Ukraine because, we don't want to get in the crosshairs of the White House. And you're seeing this, it's not only the think tank sector, it's universities, it's media organizations, it's law firms self-censoring because they don't want,
So they're afraid, basically, to do all these things? They'll lose funding?
If they come after you,
okay,
you may win, but you're going to bankrupt yourself in the process, defending yourself, even against baseless charges, right? And so you're seeing a lot of self-censorship. And so we made the decision to leave where we were and start a new think tank. I was telling somebody earlier, I was in Kyiv last February 28th when Zelensky got kicked out of the Oval Office. I was having dinner with Ukrainian friends, and all of our phones, because it's 7 hours later there, so all of our phones lit up, and we all looked at our phones and looked at each other and went, oh, shit. This is a bad day.
Can I ask, I'm curious from a foreign perspective in the U.S., how has Ukraine been able to outperform Russia so much in the technological war and in the utilization of drones? Like if I were to look on paper and I were to imagine how this would have gone, obviously the first 2 weeks were a disaster. You have Russian armor rolling down the street getting man-patted or whatever by single soldiers, just an absolute disaster. But when I think, okay, well, where is the war going to go? It's going to be massive amounts of drone swarms that are going to be flying across the battle lines. And I would think, oh man, that definitely means Russia's going to win because they've got more manufacturing, they've got Iran, they've got... How was Ukraine able to win on that front, or is currently excelling in that front? How?
Yeah, well, it's a offense, defense, or countermeasure race, right, between the Russians and Ukrainians. And Russia always has, as you noted, it's got the advantage of scale. Ukraine's advantage is decentralization and innovation. And I think that comes, decentralization, I think, is structural. That's just the way Ukraine is.
Sure.
It's not, Russia is a hyper-centralized system. Ukraine is different. It is a different country. Putin's wrong, right? Ukrainians and Russians are different people. The languages are not as similar as certainly he or most Russians would have you believe. Ukrainian actually lexically is closer to Polish than it is to Russian. It is a different national identity. It's a different system. So anyway, Ukraine's advantages have been innovation, which I think is driven by the existential nature of the conflict, right? They lose, they cease to exist. And then the decentralized nature. So that makes innovation easier, but it makes scaling up harder. I'll give you an example. I was in Sumy, Ukraine, last spring, and we went, Sumy is up on the Russian border, and we went to a university, and they had a drone trainer that they had written the software for, a couple of the professors there. They had a US 50 caliber machine gun mounted on the back of a flatbed pickup truck. You put on a VR headset and you shot down Shaheds. And it was incredibly realistic to the point where after a certain number of rounds, you had to pause to reload, right? So you couldn't just shoot. And I said to the guys, I said, this thing is amazing. Like, have you shared this with anyone, or is this, does every major city have one? They're like, oh, I don't know, we just developed it here, we're using it here. They hadn't told anybody, right? So
that's the flaw of decentralization.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So recently there has been some kerfuffle that I've been hearing from our Ukrainian friends. Zelensky let one of his generals go. Can you tell us about that situation a little bit?
The Minister of Defense Fedorov, who's a young 35-year-old, seen as a really innovative reformer. He came from the Ministry of Digital Transformation. Was very, very popular in Ukraine. I don't know. Like, I know there are protests in the streets,
yes.
And I don't understand exactly what's going on.
Sure.
Sorry.
No, that's fair. I don't either. That's what I was hoping you would.
When when Zelensky moved Zaluzhny out, who was the chief of the general staff, and he moved into London as the ambassador, that was sort of seen as taking a potential political rival and putting him somewhere where we wouldn't have as big a role and as big a sort of a presence. What I understand the Fedorov thing is about is he's clashing with Syrskyi, he is the current chief of staff. Syrskyi's older, Syrskyi's Soviet trained, Syrskyi is at least they say he has a more conventional military mindset. Fedorov is younger, more innovative, less hierarchical, wants to act more quickly, wants to do a whole lot more with unmanned systems and things like that. And so my understanding is that was the source of the clash. It was that the chief of the general staff and the Minister of Defense couldn't agree on the direction that the war should take, and I guess Zelensky felt like he had to support his chief of the general staff.
Do you think that this the protests that you're seeing and kind of like the anger that many Ukrainians are feeling of the choice, do you think that's going to affect the war effort at all?
I hope not. Because this is I think the war right now is going better for Ukraine than it has since September of 2022.
Really? Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, please.
We look at warfare at levels, the tactical, the operational, the strategic level, right? At every level, Ukraine is doing better than I've seen it do in, like I said, almost 4 years. At the tactical level, they've stabilized the front lines. So, there was this sort of the narrative all last year was inexorable Russian territorial gains that would lead to an inevitable Russian victory. It was never true, but it was the narrative. Russia's actually been losing more territory per month than it's gaining the last several months. So the Ukrainians have stabilized the front lines. They've done that they're using drones in a different way. Instead of trying to attack Russian positions along the front lines, they're attacking things farther back. So they're attacking...
Hitting the supplies and stuff like that,
logistics, they're hitting command and control. They're hitting Russian air defense radars and launchers, and so what that does is the net clears the airspace for more drones. So if you can take out the air defense in the counter drone systems and the air defense systems in a certain part of the front line, then your drones can fly basically uninhibited and hit other targets. So they've done this really deliberate campaign of damaging Russia's ability to counter drones and then using drones to attack high-value targets, and that's helped them stabilize the front lines. At the operational level, there's a great story of U.S.-Ukrainian cooperation. This Hornet drone, which is it's a joint venture between Ukraine's military and a U.S. company called Perennial Autonomy that one of the Google founders founded.
Oh, okay.
And Ukrainians came to them and said, we need a mid-range drone that is basically can't be interdicted by electronic warfare. So Perennial Autonomy, this U.S. company, helped them develop this Hornet drone with a range out to about 150 kilometers, and it's AI enabled. So if it gets into an electronic warfare, a jamming environment, it can shut off its receiver and transmitter essentially and guide itself to the target autonomously. And so they're attacking Russian logistics into Crimea. So there's only a couple of routes that go through southern Ukraine that help the Russians resupply their forces in Crimea, and Ukrainians are killing hundreds of logistics trucks a month now, food, fuel, ammunition, all this stuff. So the Russian position in Crimea is eroding. Like, it's not clear they're going to be able to hold it militarily. And so that's at the operational level, you know, they're really having an effect. And at the strategic level, they're hitting things 2,000 kilometers into Russia now. Right, they're hitting oil infrastructure. They're hitting defense industry targets. These are all legitimate targets, by the way. They're not doing what the Russians are doing, which is intentionally terrorizing civilians and attacking civilians. The Ukrainians are attacking defense industry and energy targets, and effectively.
One of the most frustrating things I would imagine from the Ukrainian perspective, from my perspective, is obviously we should be careful about existential wars. We've seen this now with Iran when they realize, well, if it's a regime change, I guess the Strait of Hormuz is fair game. It was really annoying how many restrictions we placed on Ukraine for how deep into Russia they could hit. And, you know, originally we were told that if anything crossed a border, like, that's it, you know, it's going to be World War III, they're going to start nuking everybody. But now we have drones going into Moscow, nobody's nuking anybody, that the saber rattling ended up, go figure, nobody was getting stabbed with nukes. I wish this type of, I guess attack would have been tolerated earlier on. Who knows how things could have gone differently. Do you think, as this war continues, what is the thing that you're looking for to be like actually, I don't want to. I was going to say, what's like a major tipping point? You're like, oh, okay, well, who's going to win? But actually, I have a more interesting question. I'm interested for you. How can this war possibly end where Putin is able to accept an end that doesn't involve him falling out of a building? Like, what is Putin's off-ramp for this, assuming Ukraine continues to perform decently well?
He took his own off-ramps away when he annexed 2 more provinces after the war started, right? He annexed Kherson and Zaporizhia. Had he not done that...
Just real quick, in addition to the 3, in addition to Crimea and...
Donetsk, and Luhansk.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
not just the 2 in the Donbass,
right.
but 2 more people.
Yes.
So, had he not done that, he could make a case that, well, this is really all about the Donbass and Crimea. That's what we wanted. We've got that now. So, you know, we've captured the rest of Donetsk and Luhansk provinces, and okay, I'm calling an end to the war because I've achieved my objective. He could have made that case, and Russian people probably would have. And the Russian sort of the oligarchy and, you know, the other power centers in Russia, and there are, right? It's not all. It is a personalist authoritarian regime, but it's not 100% of the power concentrated in one person. A lot, but not all. Probably everyone would have accepted that. But now what are you going to do? You just annex these other 2 provinces. So if you stop the war without capturing them, or worse, if you're forced to withdraw from them, then you have to make a case to, you know, the Russian society that has suffered hugely in terms of casualties, right? Not, you know, Putin's whole narrative on the war early on to educated urban Russians, the people he cares most about, because 1, they're the ones most likely to sort of question his legitimacy, and 2, you know, they're the most sort of economically and politically active demographic in the country. His narrative to them was, stay out of the war, it's not going to affect you, right? Just go on with your lives, make your money, and, you know, we're not going to conscript you, because they're mostly conscripting ethnic minorities and, you know, rural regions and things like that, and you're not going to see, you know, things blowing up now they are. Now things are blowing up in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Now there are persistent rumors about another partial mobilization of 300,000 up to 1 million. You can't do that again and only conscript ethnic minorities and people from the, you know, the remote regions.
Yeah.
So he's in a bit of a box. I don't think this war ends with him still in the Kremlin. I don't think he will end the war. I think it's him or the. It's existential for him, right? It's not for Russia. It was a war of choice. It was a war of choice for him when he made the choice. He didn't need to invade Ukraine. But now at this point, I don't think he can climb down.
He's put so much of his reputation and credibility into it that if he were to fail or back down, the sharks would eat them alive.
Yeah.
Especially with the lack of U.S. participation. I feel like there was a world where NATO came together and everybody defended Ukraine, and Putin had some kind of, what are we going to do? It's NATO. The entire Western world is against us. But I feel like for Ukraine, especially early on, to have been so abandoned by everybody, but then for everything to be so monumentally failed, and you said it, you get the videos from Moscow now of the billows of smoke, or that people in Crimea are starting to feel unsafe, Crimea was like not even a question. It was like, no matter what happens to Ukraine, they're never getting Crimea back.
Yeah.
Like that was beyond even
right,
thought.
Right.
Yeah, that's the only thing I guess that I kind of wonder, because when things become existential for the leadership, then there are real questions on the table. Like, I don't think it was ever the case that if you attack into Moscow or whatever, that Putin's going to start nuking everybody. But I do wonder what his options are. Maybe not in terms of nuclear weapons, but if he feels like if this ends, like, I'm gone.
Yeah, and I do think he thinks that, and that makes it harder. It makes it harder to find, bargaining space for a ceasefire. I mean, this war does end in a ceasefire. I think it ends in some sort of, negotiated settlement. I don't think either side has the capability to achieve all of their objectives purely through military force.
Fair.
But I don't know on the Russian side who that interlocutor is, right? It's not Putin, because Putin will not allow the war to end on reasonable terms while he's still in power. So then is it government after Putin, and how does he leave, and what does that look like?
It bothers me that there's no strong, I think people undervalue sometimes how important it is to have a U.S. leader who's able to step in and negotiate it as well, because it also gives everybody else kind of like a little bit of a party to, we didn't really want to have to do this, but it's the U.S., it's, whatever, they're saying this thing, but without any U.S. vision for Eurasia, for the Middle East, for anything foreign policy-wise, it's frustrating, because now it really is just Putin and Zelensky kind of negotiating with each other.
And the Europeans are doing what they can do. They're trying to help with the coalition of the willing, and they've been great on Ukraine. They've been. I've often said, if only Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, Finland, and Poland were as big as the U.S., or if only the U.S. were as resolute as those countries on Ukraine, and throw Romania in there as well. I mean, the whole eastern flank of NATO, they know what's up. They know the Russians. They've dealt with them. They've been telling us for 35 years.
And we've seen this before. It happened in Moldova. It happened with Georgia. Yeah. It's not like this. Like, you could tell the story of Georgia without using the names of the regions of the country, and it would sound like the story of Ukraine.
Yeah. No, I know. I was I worked at U.S. Embassy in Georgia from 2006 to 2008. I left a month before the Russian invasions, and it was obvious, right?
You mean the peacekeeper troops that were assisting the autonomous regions?
Yeah. Is what they officially called it. Yes, the peace enforcement operation. But yeah, I mean, look, this is, and again, if your argument is NATO caused the war in Ukraine by enlarging to the east, and we provoked Russia, then you have to explain to me. So 2008 was not the first time Russia intervened in Georgia. It intervened in the civil war in Abkhazia in 1992. It intervened in Moldova in 1992. So if your argument is NATO is causing Russia to do this by enlarging, then you have to explain to me why Russia was doing this before anyone ever uttered the words NATO enlargement, right?
Also, what is the threat?
There isn't.
No, I know that's always the question.
Rhetorical question.
They really don't want a NATO country next. First of all, as you said, the Baltics are. Nobody remembers these countries exist. They're always like, we can't have Ukraine and NATO. They border Russia. And it's like, what are Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania? What do you mean? We don't talk about these countries at all. Well, but then, what is the threat that they'll voluntarily join, and then what? Russia can't invade them? Like, is there really a world where people are saying? I know they do say this. Is that that NATO's going to invade Russia or whatever? But it's just so.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was in the Army long enough. I dealt with NATO long enough to know it is. Even if it had aggressive designs, it would struggle to implement them, to follow through. It is a consensus-based, bureaucratic organization. It just is. And it never had aggressive designs against Russia. It is a defensive alliance. And even when it enlarged institutionally, but not a single soldier moved toward the Russian border until the first invasion of Ukraine in 2014. That's when the what we call the multinational battle groups got plopped down in the Baltics and Poland. And then after Russia invaded Ukraine again in 2022, we put them in Central Europe as well. But until then, we admitted countries into NATO, but we didn't push forces toward Russia's border. So this idea that NATO was somehow like expanding and threatening Russia is nonsense. I mean, when Estonia entered NATO in 2004, when there were no American troops, German troops, anything in Estonia. It was the tiny Estonian army. That was it. It had a security guarantee, but that security guarantee was only active if it got invaded by Russia, not if it invaded Russia, which was never going to happen anyways.
To move a little off of that, but in the same vein, how concerned should we be about Taiwan given our current administration's lack of response to Ukraine or lack of ability to handle Ukraine? I worry that Xi Jinping is looking at this and saying, well, I know we have this kind of like red line with Taiwan, but will they really actually come to these guys' defense, or can we get away with it? And how worried should we be as for Taiwan?
Look, everybody in the world is watching. All countries threatened by larger neighbors, and all large neighbors that threaten their neighbors are watching what's happening in Ukraine and making inferences about it. And they're making inferences about the utility of nuclear weapons, which the Russians have shown you don't have to use them for them to be effective, right? They have essentially deterred greater Western involvement with their nuclear threats. They're making inferences about the utility of nuclear weapons for small states. Like, hey, if you're Ukraine and you're forced into a ceasefire in this war and left without security guarantees that include 50,000 foreign troops on the ground to fight on your behalf, the rational thing to do is go nuclear. That's the rational thing to do. I'm not saying I support it, but I've heard senior Ukrainian decision makers say that. And the Chinese are watching, and the Taiwanese are watching. I was in Taiwan doing research for a book project last spring. And so U.S. policy on Taiwan has always been deliberately vague and ambiguous.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
It's
Taiwan
like
Relation Act
wishy-washy, yeah.
makes it, what our policy is neither party should disturb the cross-strait status quo. And it was interesting because a couple of times during the Biden administration, Biden said very clearly, oh, yeah, we'll go to war for Taiwan. And then the White House had to, walk it back a day or two later or sort of caveat it. Trump policy on China is as incoherent as it is anywhere else. I actually had lunch with the Chinese, well, I can't say who, a senior Chinese military official posted in the United States when I was doing research for this book project. It was before our 2024 election. I said, well, if Trump gets elected, what will people in Beijing think? And he said, it'll be an earthquake. And it hasn't been, because I don't think they know what to expect, right? So in his first term, Trump was hard on China. It was pretty consistent. Yeah. And now, so he just held up a $400 million arms sale to Taiwan because he didn't want to disrupt the meeting, the summit with Xi Jinping. So I think there's more ambiguity now in our policy toward Taiwan than there ever has been, and yet the Taiwanese and the Chinese are watching the war in Ukraine and drawing lessons from it on, the Chinese on what works and what doesn't if you're the aggressor, and the Taiwanese on what works and what doesn't as a defender.
Can I ask, when it comes to Russia and China, how much of our current media diet is being fed to us via foreign propaganda outlets?
That's a great question.
That Mueller indictment from going into the Internet Research Agency, this was 10 years old, and the sophistication of the accounts that they ran was pretty troubling, and now it's only gotten to be more technologically sophisticated.
Yeah. The Russians are ahead of the Chinese on this in terms of, malign influence in our media environment. The Chinese are learning. And they're sort of following what the Russians are doing, and they're becoming more effective at it. I think China and Russia to the U.S. represent different challenges. Russia is a threat. Russia, like I said, it's the only existential threat to the U.S. China's a long-term challenge. I don't think there's any reason the U.S. and China have to go to war. I don't think it's inevitable. I actually think that both sides would define their interests in sort of strictly rational, material, non-ideological terms. There is a little ground in some places for cooperation, and we're never going to be happy with a communist one-party system. We're never going to be happy with essentially them not following through on their commitments to Hong Kong. We're never going to be happy with Xinjiang, with the human rights abuses and the oppression that goes on in China. But to be honest, that stuff goes on in 2/3 of the world, right? And we do end up having productive relationships with some countries where that goes on. So whereas Russia is a different challenge. Russia is an enemy. It's an adversary. It has defined itself as an adversary to the U.S. And as Putin's speech at the Munich Security Conference in 2007, it was essentially a declaration of war on the West through non-military means, because he didn't want to bring on a military challenge he couldn't win. but he's been trying to undermine Western social and political cohesion for almost 20 years, and he's been pretty effective at it.
Okay. Well, we are running out of time. Did you have any? If you had to give my audience one thing to take away from everything we talked about today, what would it be and why?
I think I'll go back to what I started with.
Sure.
The war in Ukraine is the most important thing happening for U.S. national security right now. We should be paying attention to it. And so look, and if I said Biden administration policy on Ukraine was adequate, Trump administration policy on Ukraine is indefensible. It's indefensible.
So literally lacking in defense
for
Iran, when there were maybe lessons that could have been learned from Ukraine that could have actually helped us there. Yeah.
Well, in the number of what they call in the military high demand, low density assets, Patriots, Tomahawks, things like that we burned through in the war in Iran means we're less able to support countries like Ukraine, our NATO allies, and ourselves. So,
well, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
It was great to meet you, sir. Yes. Thank you. Oh, gang, yes, one wonderful show after another. We got great people, great guests, great things going on. You want to come on for a minute? We got a special guest, okay? A special guest, Mr. Mooten. Do you want to turn that back? I don't know if you want to take that. Okay, it doesn't matter? Okay. Well, I don't want to. Wow, I see it now. Whick's platform is a doxing platform.
Whick's doxing.
Yeah. But no, but yeah, Mr. Mooten has been here. It's been a pleasure to meet you. Have you enjoyed the conference so far, sir?
I have. I've really enjoyed quite a few of the speakers. I've been to 3 or 4 of the panels, I think, at this point.
Okay.
And they've all been really informative or interesting. The bare minimum.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, do you have a favorite? Do you have anything that
my
stood out?
Was definitely probably the first panel that I went to with Jan Warren Muller, I believe his name was. He seems like a really interesting guy, and I bought his book, so I'm going to read it when I get home. Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell me how it is, and if you recommend it, I'll get it too.
I'll let you know.
Oh, it's been a fun time. What, and I've been asking this to a lot of people, what makes you a liberal?
I would say that the thing that makes me a liberal is I don't care just about myself. And I care more about the common society that we live in, and I want society to do well, even though it might make me do a little bit worse, because I would rather people have a better life than just me to have as EV positive of a life as possible.
That's a good answer, gang. That's a good answer. Yeah, but no.
What makes you a liberal, Whick?
Me?
Yeah.
I believe that the most oppressed minority is the individual.
Not the gamer?
Not the game. Well, the gamer individuals. Gamers often are individuals, but we have a lot of people who want to have a voice, but don't feel that they can because they're afraid of government pushing down on them. We've seen the Trump administration has taken this and floored it, right?
Greatest killing people, right?
Yes, greatest threat to free speech we've seen in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Liberalism is the answer to that, right? Having a firm rule of law, set of institutions, guiding principles that say the government cannot do certain things to you.
The pillars.
Yes, the pillars. Free speech,
yep.
Free association, free trade, free movement. Those are my things. That's what, free elections too. Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting. During one of the panels, one of the guys was asked about kind of accountability and if they're for packing the court or whatnot.
Yeah.
And he...
what was his answer? Is he a court packer? Is he one of Josiah's gang?
All 4 of these people, it was this morning's first panel, all 4 of them were against packing the court.
Based.
At least 3.
Based.
But he said something that I completely disagree with. He was like, I believe that all 9 justices have good intentions. And I was like, well, maybe 7. Maybe 7.
I think you could make that argument for 7.
Yeah,
and
7 I can hear. Alito and Thomas, absolutely not. Those are vile people.
Oh, yeah. Look, I hesitate to bring any defense to this Supreme Court, but they have decided correctly in the last few decisions that they've made. And it's been close.
What about the Voting Rights Act?
That's not one of the decisions that they've decided correctly.
That's not one of the good ones?
No. But when it comes to birthright citizenship,
yes,
it was close.
5-4, right?
5.5 to 3.5.
Yeah.
There was a one of the justices had a very narrow kind of, I think, a proprietary interpretation on this, where he would be okay with illegal immigrants getting birthright citizenship, but not tourists, which was a weird kind of carve out.
I'll give you 5.5. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give you 5.5
weird kind of carve out. But yeah, it's one of those things where the institutions, such as they are under attack and they're damaged, but they're not yet broken. So I hesitate to throw the baby out with the bathwater here and just to tear everything down when there are still steps we can take to stop Trump, just in general.
I am pro court packing. I want 13.
We heard.
I want one for each district. I think that's a great idea.
Why stop at 13? Why not 21?
One for each district. Or you know what? Fuck it. We can make it just like the district courts where they have like panels of 3. So we can do 3 times 13. You know, whatever.
Yeah, whatever that number is.
Who cares?
Could be 39.
Could be 39. Could be 69.
Could be 69. That's a funny number. It's a sexy number. But here we go. But man, Mootin, thank you. Really appreciate talking to you. I don't know if we're doing actually anything else after this. This might be it. Is this end? Do we have? This is end. Okay, this is end. The end.
The end.
Zaijian.
With the best panelists.
True. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate all of you for coming. Apologies for any tech issues or craziness or scheduling, but this has been great. So thank you again.
Thank you for coming, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Okay. Great. And if we can end the stream, and then I can count my monies. I love you all. Libcon 2026. Okay, tell me when you're done, and send it, and I can stop.
Stop streaming.
We good? Okay.